the people who are engaged in corruption. At the same time, I'm also into acting. So we also have some drama and, let's say, series. There's a series I've worked on that is against embezzlement of funds. Yeah, so we are creating awareness to fight against it.
The first thing that I'm doing to fight corruption is tracking of the county government promises using the manifesto, and that I'm referring to the Mombasa County. And the next thing that I'm doing is participating in these budget processes. I also do participate in the community sensitization.
As an activist, I have a responsibility. First, not to promote corruption. Secondly, to assist culprits or to assist people who are involved in corruption, or who are negatively affected by corruption. And at the same time, to create awareness about this issue to the local community that I live in.
Mimi kama mimi mtu wa bodaboda napigana na ofisadi ile, nikishikwa na polisi, niko na driving license, niko na insurance, polisi akinishika paka nipeleke tu kotini kwa sababu niko na kila kitu. Sasa kama atataka pesa nitamwambia mimi nipeleke ndani, nipeleke kotini.
What comes to my mind is people trying to benefit someone giving something in order for someone to provide him with something that both of them doesn't fit to have.
It's a form of injustice to others. It's a form of violating one's rights, and it's a form of oppression.
Unduly influencing someone. It can be in form of monetary influence, or it can manifest in different forms. For example, nepotism is a form of corruption.
It's the misuse of power by the people who are in authority just so that they can benefit.
Fisadi, kitu ambayo inakuja kwa akili yangu ni pesa ya haramu.
Misuse of power, or somebody doing something wrong knowingly.
The very first thing that comes to mind is the embezzlement of funds by those in power, and mostly those in the government.
Corruption, to me, I normally see it as a pandemic. I can say it's a pandemic. It's a problem beyond solutions to me. That's what I see it.
Anytime I hear the word corruption, I see us. Because we are corruption, we encourage corruption. We are part and parcel of corruption.
My name is Sylvester Juma. I am a human rights defender and also a human rights lawyer.
community to understand things like the public participation. When a public bill is being passed at a local level, they have to participate and be part of that planning.
My fight.
Hi. So good morning, everyone. Morning. I hope you're enjoying your breakfast. So we are just about to start, but we are having a briefing session that is happening right now between ourselves and the oversight institutions. So they are winding up so that they can join us here. So in the next probably 10 minutes, we should be starting. But in the meantime, please enjoy your breakfasts, get to interact with your neighbor, know what they are doing to reduce bribery, find out if they have paid any bribe while coming to this meeting, and then we'll start off with those experiences. All right? Yeah, so karibuni sana. Let's enjoy our breakfast. And also in the meantime, we'll be having some entertainment going on from some of our activists. Yeah? So we'll get to experience that too as we continue. So thank you very much. So is it Brian or Geoffrey starting? All right. I think we can start us off so that we can, as we enjoy our breakfast. Karibu.
Good morning. Good morning once more. Yeah, for those who know me, my name is Brian Silways. For those who don't, my name is still Brian Silways. I'm an urban spoken word and I'm a proud Nax vegan. I come from Nakuru. And someone asked me, mbona tukikuja meetings za TI huwa tunaanza na chai? Nikamwambia ni juu ni TI. Hiyo imewapita. You need to be good students. So even if you don't take a look at me, I will still do it. Then the rest of you. Then rest in peace to all the fallen comrades. You see, some were killed through abduction, some through the bullet. To some they were brothers, to some they were sisters, to some they were mothers, to some they were fathers, wengine wamebaki wajane, wengine ni wagane. How low can these police officers go just to kill a high school student? But do they need this moment of silence? No. Maybe they need a moment of justice. Respect is where trust is. Ama to replace police na mawaiters ndo tukue served justice. Wambia hata wakikam clean, I will still believe and trust my black jeans. Kwa sababu I ask, between education and communication, which one is the real key? Another key issue is we can't go on with this conversation because even the dent in our press is linked to your president. Now before you respond to this, first of all, respond to those who are killed, because that's all I care about. I don't care about your entitlement. What is this culture that people with zero interest about us are the ones called to represent us? All I'm trying to say, enough is enough. Enough of these games unless it's a word play for my fans. Enough of the rich going to represent us and making poor decisions for us. Do they know how it feels to be homeless? Yes. No. Maybe they know how to feel at home. Because for the last, since yesterday wamekuwa unable to lead us. Sasa itabidi tumekuwa leaders of today for the sake of tomorrow. Na wakipray on us, tutapray for us na tutaomba to an extent na tutawai boro. Health crisis na behave as if hamjui who is responsible. Time election walifanya kila kitu possible. After election, mission impossible. So nikisema story come, unasema story go. Nikisema story go, unasema story come. Story come. Story come. Na story go. To God be the glory. No lie, hakuna good so nowadays na worry. Kwa sababu kesi za injustices zimekuwa plenty na corruption imekuwa kama food, ndo maana wale mfuko zao ziko full, sisi wenye zetu ziko empty. Atu wakiingia kwa gavota leta change, but after election wanaingia undercover. Huku wanaacha watu wao kwa street hawana hata kitu ya kuwa cover. As usual tunakuanga njana, hatuwezi karanga. Kwa manifesto yao utadhani watatupeleka far, but ukweli ndo kitu wananga, ile kitu wanakuanga nayo ni tamaa ya mabenzi. Ndo maana kwa mfuko wameja kujaza mapeni. Ikikuja ni social media, Mr. Politician hupata likes many, lakini huwezi toa comments kwa kazi zao kwa sababu ni blank. Hazina tofauti na zile suti zao za black kuja kututishia nazo time ya campaign. Ningeambiwa ni kwa set trust nyuma kalod ya transist, nita-insist, nitasisitiza a way to say no to stress. Kwa hiyo mattress landlord wana plot na maagent vile watameka wa night sleepless, extra pressure. Ukipata padlock extra kwa mlango, elimu ni ufunguo wa maisha lakini si wa mlango. So hapo kwako kwa Wangware education keys ni useless. Hata uwe na more spice useless. Whether in the past ama present, relax, tense, don't stay wondering what to do. Stay hydrated because water is source of life, but life is not source of water. Weomba kazi na wasko pia ukate maji lakini usikate kakwota. Na kabla ulewe chakari, ulihepa aje option ya soda. Mrembo Valentine iliisha, so kuachwa utaachwa. Because na hii ekonomi ya kasongo unalilia mbegu ya boyfriend akutaki, nikao juu unaweza pata jeans kwa toja. Na bro, hata kama umeunga kwa gym, usitumie mapenzi ya kifua. Because I'm talking about black women. Use your hands to clap, not to slap that woman. What a man can do, a woman can do. Better believe me, that's not rumors. Looking down on an African woman to impress another man, now that's a man who lacks both sense and humor. Na address wala wanaume huita madem sura kiatu simply because ulishindwa ku afford that ndula. Story go. Na story come. Cheer up. Story go. Na story come. Yeah, my name is Brian Silwes and I come from Nakuru, and I'm inviting you to my album launch happening on 3rd of August, Avangi 2.0. It's a poetry showcase, and see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Brian from Nax Vegas. Story come. Story go. As I was coming here, bado rhyme yangu haijakuja. So thank you very much. So they have requested we give them another like 7 minutes from the holding room so that we can start. But after we are starting, we'll be able to catch up with the program since it's not very packed. We'll be focusing more on the feedback from the report, or sharing the findings from the reports that will be launched today. So let's just give them that time. But in the meantime, please continue enjoying your breakfast, interacting with those who you've not seen for a while, and getting to know others who you're meeting for the first time today. So yeah, karibuni.
Corruption. Secondly, to assist culprits or to assist people who are involved in corruption or who are negatively affected by corruption, and at the same time to create awareness about this issue to the local community that
Sasa kama anataka pesa, nitamwambia mimi nipeleke ndani, nipeleke kotini.
The current government is not fighting any corruption. It's not at all, because it's just doing what the previous regime did. So they haven't put any steps to stop corruption. So it's just a continuation of where we stopped.
Personally, I don't know if there's anything that will be done in future, but currently there's little that the government is really trying to do in order to fight corruption.
Serikali yetu
All right, all right, all right, all right.
Wanasema wanapigana na ufisadi, lakini hatujaona.
Mjaona mnapigana na ufisadi. Eh? So we were just getting some views pale kwa ground. Kuna watu wanasema siku hizi ni kusikiza ground, so watu wa ground wanasema mambo ya ufisadi hapo. So good morning everyone. Yeah, so like I had mentioned, we are done with the session that was there earlier. Thank you very much for joining us. We are about to start. And we are going to start off with a word of prayer so that we're able to move with the program as is. Can we have a volunteer to lead us in a word of prayer? I'm looking at Bishop there. Thank you for volunteering. Yeah, you can say hi and lead us in a word of prayer.
Good morning, everyone. God is good, and all the time, and that is his nature. Shall we pray? Our Father and our God, we come before your throne of grace. We pause at your presence this morning, reflecting on your goodness, the good things that you have done, what you are doing, and what you are going to do. We'd want to commit this interaction into your hands, and we pray as we reason together, you give us direction, and that, Lord, by your grace, you will deliver us from what we are witnessing, and give us, Lord, your mercy, so that we can make this nation a better place. Thank you for all those who've come, our partners, and in Transparency International, how we pray that you grant them the strength and your goodwill so that they can continue with the good work. Begin with us and end with us. For this we have prayed in the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Amen.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on swiftly, I'll be requesting our soloist at TI to lead us in the national anthem, Samuel Komu.
Okay,
yeah.
Good morning.
So, second prayer.
So please let's be outstanding for the national anthem and also the East Africa anthem. We'll get the cue from the team here, our IT team. have a seat.
All right. Thank you very much, Komu. That was not your voice, but we accept that nowadays technology is used to fill up a lot of gaps. So thank you very much. We'll be getting into just some welcoming remarks from our programs manager, Gibson. And as he comes in, will be the earlier team before you came in, the team that was away, had shared on the experiences of bribery as they came to this meeting. They were very open about it. So I don't know if anyone from who was not here before had an incident of bribery when they were coming to this meeting. We want to see the statistics. Yeah, I know because it's not anonymous right now, and it's a crime both to give and to receive. Yeah, I know a lot of you may not accept to be identified as givers or receivers, but yeah, we'll see how that has been happening. So as we get into the welcoming remarks, is just to appreciate that we have representation from a number of institutions that will be speaking to some of the findings that we have here. I think we have representation from the judiciary. Yeah, karibu sana. We have representation from Kenya Revenue Authority, KRA. Karibu. Civil Registration Services. Karibuni sana. National Police Service. They in the room. Yeah, probably taking some tea. Ministry of Lands or Lands Offices. The National Transport NTSA, Huduma Centers. Yeah, karibuni sana. We are having representation from the Embassy of Sweden. Karibu. Embassy of Finland, you're very welcome. From Conrad, karibu sana. We have representation from Global Compact, the Interreligious Council of Kenya. I'm saying them as I see you, so I'll be recognizing a lot of us as we continue with the meeting. We have representation from ACT, having been the working group on devolution, from our comrades from the Kenya Human Rights Commission. Karibu. So we'll Inuka Kenya, I can see you. So we'll continue recognizing a lot of us as we continue with the discussions, as we get to know each other. So feel very welcome as we get into the opening remarks. And as I call Gibson, is only to recognize that this engagement has been supported by our friends from Diaconia with support from the Embassy of Sweden. We greatly appreciate your support and your presence in this forum. So thank you very much. Gibson, karibu.
Thank you so much, Titus. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Come on. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I know it's very cold, but we can do better and we can try and just voice our responses. Thank you so much for making it this chilly morning. We so much appreciate the fact that you have managed to find time and be with us here, and we really appreciate you. Yes, and glad to see different sectors represented, the embassies, development partners, our peers, our allies, and just the different sectors that are represented here this morning. And so we really say most welcome, even as we are getting into this important event this morning. So as you heard, or as you saw in the invitation, we gather here this morning to be able to launch and disseminate the County Governance Status Report and Kenya Bribery Index Report 2025. And so this would be an opportunity for us to be able to share with you what the citizens are telling us about, the two aspects: the status of the status of governance, and then also, the status of bribery currently or as of 2025. The County Governance Status Survey 2025 is basically a follow-up of similar surveys that we conducted in the previous years. But of importance is we'll be making reference to two. One we conducted in 2017, which will primarily be more like the baseline that we'll be making reference to. And then another one that we conducted in 2019, which will pretty much be like the mid kind of survey that we'll be making reference to. And then now juxtaposing it versus what we are getting in 2025. So that would really be important as far as comparison of those are concerned. This report examines the state of governance at the county level from the perspective of various stakeholders. And so, among others, we'll be sharing with you insights into how citizens understand, for instance, the role of different elected leaders. And so it will be interesting to know, like, to what level are people having contact with, for instance, the Office of the Women Representative. We have interesting, figures to be able to share with you as we compare it, for instance, with, the MP, the governor, the senator, and to what extent do really people understand even their roles? And so what does that really tell as far as then holding these particular leaders to account? We'll actually be sharing some of the insights around that. I understand most of us here know about the main document when it comes to planning at the county level. The County Integrated Development Plan, for instance, the CIDP. It would be interesting to see how many people are actually aware, let alone, or also not mentioning how many people have actually interacted with the document. And the figures and the facts that are coming out of that, pointing to the fact that a significant percentage, as will be mentioned, actually clueless. So again, what does that really mean as far as following up on the projects and on the different aspects of the county level is concerned? So those are some of the things that we'll be sharing, especially when it comes to the County Governance Status Report, even as we paint a picture in terms of how really things are at the moment. And then the next report is the Kenya Bribery Index, which basically sought to deduce bribery patterns at the county and national level with regards to access to public services. We'll be getting to interact with the sampled sectors, but of course, key among them being the police, the judiciary, and the rest. And so what are the figures saying? Have there been improvements? Have there been relapses or something like that? We'll just be getting to know exactly how that looks like. And so these are some of the things that really would be looking at this morning, and looking at the facts, the finding, the figures, and what those communicate. Now, we collected this not just to share and possibly stimulate reaction, but this was in a bid to, generate actionable or as evidence to be able to facilitate and stimulate actionable advocacy towards better governance, as well as to reform interventions to counter bribery practices in public service delivery. So even as we interact with the data that will be shared this morning, it goes beyond the figures that will be shared here. It goes beyond that and really is supposed to make us ask ourselves, so what next? What is it that we are supposed to do? Yeah? What are some of the things that we really need to focus on? Where is it ailing us? So that then we're able to direct our treatment to the right places that need actually some kind of reforms and some kind of adjustment. So ladies and gentlemen, this morning I prepare to welcome our consultant, Mr. Mwangi Kibathi, to be able to come forward and just be able to share with us. So I think the person who's queuing the presentation should be ready to do that. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts as we get into this particular session of interacting with the findings, facts, and figures, and also getting to know what are citizens telling us out there as far as these two reports are concerned. So once, of course, we have the sharing by Mr. Mwangi, we'll have an opportunity to get feedback from you on what will be presented here. If the initial responses pointing out to, for instance, already indicating maybe some of the things that are already happening, we'll be more than happy to hear that from the different sectors that will be mentioned. But also for everyone, just being able to, jump in and be able to give us your sentiments on the same. And then now, of course, we'll be able to move to the next aspect, which will be on main remarks, even as we move with the rest of the program. And so, Titus, I believe I can take it directly to him, or you can give it back to you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you so much. So, Titus, you can have that.
All right, thank you, Gibson. Let's give Gibson a clap, yeah? It's cold, so we need a bit of exercise. As we also recognize those of us who have come in. We have the Vice Chair of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights who's joined us. Karibu sana. Oh, the CEO, sorry. Karibu. Then we also have Global Financial Integrity. Philip, there behind. Karibu sana. The National Democratic Institute. Dennis, karibu. Yeah, so I think as we continue, we also have representation from the Embassy of Germany. Yeah, karibu. From the EU, European Union. Yeah, karibu sana. Yeah, so we are getting into the findings. We'll be starting with the Kenya Bribery Index 2025. Like Gibson has said, we'll be looking at experiences and perceptions. What have been our experiences? We hope that the findings of this report will also, being citizens who are users of public services, they will also resonate with your daily experiences, and we'll also be finding more opportunities to interact with how we can address these issues of bribery. So, Bwana Mwangi, Dr. Mwangi, karibu sana. You can take it up from here.
Good morning, everyone. I start off with the bribery index. I think the introductions have been well captured. I just need to mention that there are two reports, and I will quickly transition from one to the other, so that if you have any issues that you pick on this first report, then just note them down, and then we'll handle them after the two presentations. So thank you so much. The background, very important, that TI defines bribery as an act of offering, promising, or accepting or soliciting advantage as an inducement for action which is illegal and ethical. I think that's very important to form our background of our discussions this morning. The whole rationale about the bribery index and the interest of Transparency International and all of us in this room about bribery is that it has quite a number of implications to the country, to the citizen, and to governance. And even without having to read through what is presented here, I just need to mention that one of the key concerns is that bribery grants unfair advantage to payers. If I can afford to pay a bribe, then I get what perhaps I should not have got in terms of service, or at a time when I should not have got it. And basically, the whole impact on public finance and institutional accountability. If we are out there conducting issues of bribery and generally corruption, what does that mean to our public finance? If we are paying bribes to access tenders, for example, what does that mean to cost of service delivery? Quickly, I think we can leave that. The overall objective of the survey was to provide an empirical measure of bribery practices across the sampled institutions and public service sectors. Because it's very easy out there to say there is bribery in particular institution X and Y, and it's also very easy for that institution to come back and say, but where is the evidence? How do you tell there is bribery? Where? In what aspects? So that therefore, the survey therefore provides empirical evidence for both of us who are in the governance sector and those who are in the service provision sector to get evidence against which they can act against bribery. I think that we can jump that the specific objectives and goes direct to how this data was corrected. This was face-to-face survey that was done at household level. We sampled 15 counties out of the 47, and they are listed here. I don't want to lead through them. Just to mention that the key concerns was to make sure that we had a representative sample across the country. We had counties across the 7 of the 8 previous regions, and the sample sizes are as listed. The numbers, the sample size is a representation of the proportional presentation from 2019 survey, the latest survey by KNBS. You can see the numbers are close with some counties like Nairobi having quite some huge number, 201, Kiambu, and of course the small counties of having smaller representation. Quickly, we can learn to the survey indicators. So how exactly was the survey findings derived? The survey is founded across 5 indicators. The first indicator is the likelihood. And by likelihood, here we mean the probability that an individual approaching a certain institution would find himself or herself in a bribery situation, that he would have a bribe either demanded from him or her, expected in a certain way, or in situations where it is the bribe payer who actually offers to pay the bribe. So the likelihood then tells us the probability of a service seeker finding himself in or herself in such a situation. The second indicator of the survey is the prevalence of bribery. Prevalence is a measure of the actual proportion of people who, after finding themselves in a bribery situation, would go ahead and pay the bribe. So what is the proportion of citizens who found themselves in a bribery situation and actually paid a bribe? That is the preference. Next, please. The third indicator is on the average size of bribe, and this measures the out of all the bribes that were reported having been paid in particular institutions by X number of persons, on average, how much was the bribe? And what this indicator seeks to tell you is how expensive, if I could use that word, in terms of bribery, is it to get services from a particular institution. When we get to the actual presentation, in terms of the figures, you'd find that there are some institutions where the likelihood of getting yourself in a bribery situation is very high, but when it comes to the size of the actual bribe that you pay is much less. And there is a reverse. You find that there are some institutions where you are so likely to find yourself being asked to pay a bribe, but the size is much smaller because maybe of the service, the kind of service they offer. The national share of bribe is now an indicator that seeks to tell us out of all the bribes that were reported having been paid by the respondents, approximately how much went to particular institutions. So that if we are sitting in this room and saying that 100 shillings was paid in terms of total bribes, approximately how much was exactly how much, not approximate actually, exactly how much went to a particular institution, and that tells you the claim of that institution to all the bribes paid. Lastly, the last indicator is on impact of bribery. This is a measure of the proportion of citizens who believe that they would not have accessed a particular service from the particular institution they paid bribe to unless they paid that bribe. So this is I would think this is the most severe implication of bribery, that without paying this bribe, I would not have got the particular service. So what proportion of citizens believed so when interacting with particular institutions? In terms of who we spoke to, the first, across the gender, we spoke to slightly more males than females at 50.9 against 49.8. I think a good presentation of the national population. Across urban-rural divide, we had our sample structured at 72% from the rural areas and 28% from the urban areas. I think the general situation in the country. Across the age, we had this biggest sample from age 25 to 34 at 35.3%, followed by age 35 to 44 at 25%. So basically we are saying between age 25 to 44 comprised about 60% of the sample. Across the occupations, we had the highest proportion of the respondents picked from people who are self-employed or employed in family business, basically people in the informal sector, almost a half of the sample. And we had, that was followed by 21% of the sample which reported to be unemployed. Can proceed. So out of the sample that we spoke to, what proportion found themselves in a bribery situation? Remember we mentioned bribery situation as persons who found themselves in a situation where they either offered to pay a bribe or it was expected or demanded from them. We had 75% reporting that they didn't encounter bribery situation. And a reminder, 23% had bribery demanded or expected from them. And we had 2% who reported that it is them who made the first move or they offered to pay a bribe. When you look at that across the changes across the years, you find that the previous survey in 2019, we had 77% of the respondents reporting that when interacting with these different institutions, they didn't find themselves in a bribery situation, and 20% having bribe demanded or expected from them, and 3% offering to pay. I think you can proceed. Now, the next question for the survey was, out of the ones who reported finding themselves in a bribery situation, what proportion actually paid bribes? For this particular survey in 2025, 68% of those who found themselves in a bribery situation actually paid. And what perhaps does that tell us? That once a bribe is demanded from you, chances of you failing to pay for different reasons are very slim. Almost 70% have to pay once a demand is made from them. I don't want to lead the other years. I think that will be in the main report. Now, getting straight to the findings. I need to mention that the aggregate index presented here is a composite index, or a compilation of all the 5 indicators. When we get the likelihood, the prevalence, the share of the bribe and all that, and compose an aggregate index, this is now what we have for the different institutions. We have police ranked at 84, and I need to mention that the aggregate index runs from 0 to 100, with the 100 being the most adverse. So police at 84. We have all the rest, large services at 45, and all the rest all the way to Huduma centers at 26.4. Now, how has this index changed across the years? For the previous survey, which was in 2019, the police had an aggregate index, reported an aggregate index of 64. So we are seeing a deterioration of 20 percentage points across the 6 years. And we can see different institutions. We had judiciary at 69, then coming to 40.8 this year. We had the last education services at 12.4 and deteriorating to 28.4, almost 12 percentage points deterioration. So, and all this is in the main report. So the whole idea is to create a visual of how different institutions are performing across the years. Now, to the specific indicators, likelihood, that's the percentage of those people who found themselves in a bribery situation. Police, 72.2, that is 7 out of 10 respondents found themselves in a bribery situation when interacting with the police. Large services at 64.6, lands down all the way to Huduma centers at 9. And how has that indicator been changing across the years? We've seen the police being almost static from 75 to 72. We've seen large services becoming much worse, from 21.8 to 64.6. That's a huge jump on the negative. Civil registration, 42, and jumping to 64, and all that. I don't want to read the whole thing. But you can see the pattern that I'm trying to draw. On prevalence, the proportion that actually paid a bribe after being demanded or expected to pay, police 51.3, motor vehicle licensing at 48.8, medical services, I want to read just a few. Medical services at 37.1, education services 10.2. And how has that been changing across the years? 2019, the police were ranked at 46.5, the judiciary at 46.7, no major change, and civil registration, again, no major change. The average size of bribe, so how much bribe was reported per each of the respondents who reported paying bribes. Now, the judiciary tops here with an average bribe of 18,800, followed by the large services at 12,600. And there is perhaps, let me lead quickly about the police at 6,800. So whereas the police have been reading in the other three indicators, when it comes to the average size of bribe, then it falls, probably because of the kind of services they offer, but perhaps the extractive value of the judiciary in terms of the power to extract bribe now becomes much higher, as indicated. And the figure was actually much higher in 2019 at 24,000. You can go down all the way to, say, civil registration, 1270, which was 1361, the previous survey. But again, even as we read these figures, I think we also need to look at the implications in terms of the services offered. For example, how much does it cost to get a birth certificate, and against the amount of bribe that perhaps you need to pay to get it. So the numbers may, the big figure may have a story, but we also need to look at to interrogate the figures much further in terms of what is this that somebody would pay for 2,031 to acquire Huduma Center, so that it may look like a small number, but against, when you look at the story in terms of the services offered, then you may get a different implication. We got interested in terms of why are people actually paying bribes. And the most common reason that came out was people believe that it was the only, majority of the people believe it was the only reason or the only way they could get the services that they were seeking. And that was mentioned by 34% of the respondents for this particular year. There are 27% of the respondents who paid to hasten the services, to beat the bureaucratic delays and all that. So you deserve the service, you still have got it, but you think, let me pay so that I can get it today and not tomorrow. There is a proportion, 18%, who reported paying because they want to avoid problems with authorities. Maybe you are lagging behind in terms of certain regulatory requirement, so you want to avoid having maybe to go the wrong way to the court and all that. There are those who paid just because it was expected. I knew they wanted a bribe, so I had to pay. Simple. So, and I don't have to read all the rest, but the most key, I think we can highlight the first two reasons as the most concerning. That there are people out there who believe that the only way to get services is to pay bribe. Next, please. Then after all that complaint, all those complaints about bribery and the sizes and all that, we got a question to throw back the ball to the service seekers or the ordinary citizens, whether they actually reported these bribery cases. And unfortunately, out of every 8 out of every 10, or 83%, reported that, told us that they didn't report. And the pattern is consistent across the years, 87% in 2019, 94% in 2017. So the level of reporting of bribery is very, very low. And of course, that creates a question. Why are you not reporting? When you get to that, then you get majority of citizens, that's for 2025, a quarter, telling you that I knew no action would be taken. That's a quite a finding. Then, of course, there are those who would come out and say that they feared intimidation. I knew perhaps negative action would be taken against me, so that's why I didn't report. Then, of course, there are those who would be open enough and tell you that I was a beneficiary to whatever. Maybe if somebody is paying to avoid the queues and all that, or perhaps get a service they don't deserve, then they are a beneficiary, perhaps. And that's the reason why they would not report. Next, please. Then the last bit about this survey was to get the general views of citizens about the threats about corruption in the country. And the first question that we asked them is to tell us how they think the rates of corruption have changed in the last year, or the 12 months preceding the survey. And 71% of the respondents felt that the level of corruption has lost 12 months preceding the survey. There are these 12% who reported that it remained the same. So basically, we are saying 83% of the respondents felt that the level of corruption has either remained the same or got worse. Well, of course, there is a fifth who believe, or about 20% who believe that the situation is getting better. Then the last question that we asked them was about how they think the situation will change in the 12 months after the survey, a year from now. And we had 47% who believed that the level of corruption will increase or it will get worse. That's about half of the respondents. There were about 25% who noted that, or are optimistic that it will decrease. And interesting, I need to perhaps mention that there are those who just say, we don't know. I think it may look like a meaningless response, but it shows the uncertainty, a level of uncertainty that there is quite a proportion that really can't even form an opinion of how the corruption levels will change in the next 1 year. So what is TI recommending? Police reforms are targeting to aid bribery. We have had TI and so many other actors ranking police as a most bribery prone institution. So I think, therefore, that recommendation is very well welcome and founded. The issue of digitization and automation of government services, so that to remove that face-to-face and physical interactions that create room for demands for bribery. Then in terms of service delivery at the county level, that the county government should ensure that there is a highest level of service delivery in terms of service delivery, that services are adequate and safe, and that there is clear and available response feedback mechanisms. Next, recommendations to the judiciary. The idea of having available space for efficient whistleblower and complaints mechanisms, again, so that citizens can give real-time responses on judicial service delivery. Recommendations to Parliament, legislative development to fill gaps like whistleblower protection, conflict of interest. I think these are gaps that have been consistent for a very long time, and they need to be closed. I think we can move to next one. Independent recommendations to independent and constitutional commissions, independent offices and constitutional commissions. First one to CAJ, outline guidelines for public offices on the minimum requirement for whistleblower compliments mechanisms. That citizens should have clear opportunities to lay some of these concerns. We already seen a situation where more than 80% are not reporting bribery. So perhaps one of the mechanisms perhaps should be to provide these channels. To EACC, monitor and report and implement enforcement measures on the compliance to the Anti-Bribery Law, the Anti-Bribery Act of 2016. To the Office of Public Prosecutor, ensure that we restore public trust in the exercise of the prosecutorial powers, ensuring that guidelines and decisions to change. Next, please. To non-state actors, most people around the room. First, to the media, the sustained pressure on public awareness, to provisions of the anti-bribery and anti-corruption legislation, so that more and more people out there can be able to act on their own. The civil and religious sector, again in terms of being the voice of the citizenry in terms of public pressure. The private sector, promote ethical business practices and compliance to legal requirements for anti-bribery efforts. The private sector, of course, the bribery is two-way, and sometimes, maybe often, the private sector has some space in terms of corruption that is happening in the public sector. So what are you doing in terms of promoting and helping the public sector to overcome some of the challenges? I think that is the end of the first presentation. I'll stop stop there as we load the next presentation on county governance. Yeah, we're up. As an introduction, I just need to mention that the Constitution of Kenya 2010 enumerates very key objectives as to why Kenya went the devolved way, or why devolution was adopted as a structure of governance in this country. And the first one is to promote accountable and democratic exercise of power, and 2, to grant self-governance to the people, and 3, provision of proximate and easily accessible service provision. There are so many other objectives under this article of the Constitution, but those are the 3 most critical that forms the background of this survey that we are presenting today. And just as a matter of background, just to mention that TI has been working with the county governments across the years with the aim to help them realize or move towards the realization of effective, transparent, and accountable governance at local level. So that's the interest of TI, and that forms the key interest of this survey. And one of the things, of course, one of the ways to do that is to, of course, generate evidence against which that kind of discussion can happen. So what was the overall objective of this study? The objective was to improve transparency and accountability in county governance by progressively supporting county governance system strengthening. So all the findings that we'll get into this in this report are in a way trying to answer the question of how can TI and all the other players and actors use the evidence presented to help strengthen the governance systems within the county governments. I don't want to read the specific objectives in the interest of time. I think it's the main report. The methodology. We spoke to, just like in the previous survey, we spoke to the general citizenry, of course, above 18 years, selected across the sample counties, and to widen the scope of this particular survey, because it's about service delivery within the counties. We spoke to the executive within the counties, and the executives here were represented by chief officers. And within each county, we picked 3 critical services of health, education, and water. And because of the centrality of finance in coordinating and providing the financial muscle, we also spoke to them. On the other side of the oversight, we spoke to the chairs or the MCAs chairing the committees of the respective offices that we spoke to, that is health, education, water, and finance. So general citizenry, the executive, and then the oversight, that's the MCAs. And those are the numbers across the different counties in terms of representation. Again, picked in proportion to the average size of the population. data collection face to face and processed through Kobo Collect into a central server. And then, of course, the graphics, processed graphics that we are presenting today. So who do you speak to? Again, slightly more males than female respondents at 52% against 48%. In terms of a rural-urban divide, again we had majority of the respondents, 73.8% picked from the rural areas against 26% from the urban areas. And what is the employment status of the persons as you spoke to? Almost a half, that is 49.8%, were persons who reported to be self-employed, that is people in the informal sector. And that was followed by about a fifth, that is 21%, who reported as people who are unemployed. The report is structured across 4 key themes. The first theme is on accountability. And the second theme is on access to information. Then the third theme is on service delivery. And lastly, we have a theme on integrity. So on accountability, the questions were structured across 5 key themes. 1, we wanted to know the level of knowledge on the laws of different elected officials. 2, the extent and opportunities of interaction between the citizenry and the elected officials. How much do they interact? And 3, the level of knowledge of citizenry on how to contact elected officials. Do citizens know how to interact or to contact their elected officials? And the other bit was on how citizens rate the performance of the different officials. And we had a question on the likelihood that the citizenry would elect a female representative or a female leader in each of the 4 elected elective offices. So the first question on accountability was the awareness of the law of elected officials. And the basis of this question was, you cannot hold elected officials into account if you are not aware of the law as provided in the law. And what we found out is that the members of parliament, the office of the member of parliament, is where the citizens were most comfortable in terms of enumerating the laws. And that was closely followed by the office of the governor and the MCA. Now, the office of the woman representative and that of the senator reported the lowest level of awareness among the citizens in terms of, do they know what these offices were set out to do? And that, of course, tells us how citizens are able, how to hold these 2 offices into account. Then after that, after citizens reporting to us that they are aware or the level of knowledge of the different elected officials, then we were interested in knowing whether they have direct interaction with these elected officials in the 12 months preceding the survey. And the office of the member of the county assembly reported the highest at 24.9%. and that was followed by the Office of the Governor at 18.7%. Of course, not very interesting statistics. 24% for MCA, given the proximity of their and the small size of their constituency, of course, maybe not very interesting. But of concern is the Office of the Woman Rep, which reported just 4% level of interaction. The proportion of citizens that reported interacting with the Office of the Woman Representative, the 12 months preceding the survey, 4%. And that has been consistent across the years. 2019 it was again 4%, and 2016 survey it was 7%. Senator, 5% this survey, 3% the previous survey, and 5% in year 2016. The next question that formed our discussion was, are citizens aware of how they would contact the elected leaders if they wished to? Because it is one thing for them to tell us they didn't contact them, but are they aware in the first place how they would contact the different elected leaders? I want to start with the Office of the MCA, which reported 53%, perhaps because of geographical proximity. But when you look at, say, the Office of the Senator, only 17.7% are aware of how they would contact their senator if they needed to. Look, you can go down to the Office of a Woman Representative at 17%. So, and that tells a story. How then can you hold them to account if you are not even aware how to contact them? And that becomes a real concern on accountability. Then when we spoke to MCAs and you asked them to elate themselves in terms of the greatest achievement, 43% mentioned development at the ward level is the greatest achievement. We had 34% which mentioned representation of citizens and all the rest. So, but I just want to draw your attention to 43% which mentioned development at the ward level as the greatest achievement. And that tells you perhaps the concern about our leadership. Because what are the key functions of an MCA? If they see that delivering physical development is the greatest achievement, then we might have a concern there. Because perhaps if it was representation or passing laws or oversight, those are their key functions. But if more than almost a half think physical development perhaps is the biggest achievement, then we might have problems in terms of accountability. Then we got interested to ask MCAs again, the members of the county assemblies, the biggest challenges they face in their work. And the majority of them mentioned inadequate financing, all the way down to a number which mentioned that the budget reviews that happen across the year disrupt their work and all that. Address in disbursement of funds. Perhaps the discussion allowed here would see that most of them are mentioning funds. I don't know what that means to people around the room here, but perhaps the implication would be that you don't see much mention about well, there's quite a mention about citizens not understanding their role, but when you just oppose this with the previous finding, then you can see there might be a more complicated story. Next, please. The next set of findings were on transparency, and the questions we are asking were, one, the extent to which counties share communication with the citizenry; two, the preferred medium of communication; the level of knowledge of citizens on ongoing projects; and lastly, the extent to which governments provide critical documentations to the citizenry. Next, please. So in terms of the proportion of citizens who have received communication from the county, the 12 months preceding the survey, we had more than half mentioning that they have received such communication direct the last 1 year. Next, please. And then we are asking the citizenry, what would you prefer, the source of or channel of communication between you and the county government? More than half mentioned the use of local radio. You can see all the rest. A county website at 14%. You can. The essence is that the use of radio remains the most potent or preferred channel of communication. We are also interested in knowing, when you approach the county governments or county offices, what kind of information are you interested in getting? And interestingly, more than a third mentioned that they are normally interested in getting invites for public participation, which is good. Of course, for practical reasons, there are those who contact county governments for jobs and all that. And budget information last at 5.7%. That also tells a story in terms of what proportion of citizens would know want to know how budgets are run. Awareness of critical documents by the citizenry. We wanted to know whether citizens out there are aware of critical documents within the governance sector, first nationally and within their counties. 94% of those we spoke to are aware of the Constitution, but only half of those have actually read that Constitution. The county integrated development plan, a third reported are aware of CIDP and what it is, but only a small margin of them have actually read the document. And you can go through that and see the level of information is quite low in terms of the critical documents, the plans, the budgets, and all that. The findings on service delivery. The key questions were the kind of services citizens consider to be most critical, and how citizens rate service delivery within different sectors. And we also were interested in how the executive and the local assemblies rate their service delivery. And lastly, the challenges to effective service delivery. Next, please. In terms of which services are seen to be very critical by the citizens, the highest was reported to be health services at 44%. Of course, health is very critical. Followed by education at 21%. I don't want to read the list for the interest of time, but just mark education and health. I think that's very critical. Then we asked the citizens, how, on a general perspective, how would you rate your county in terms of service delivery? Slightly more than half, that is 51%, rate service delivery, the quality of service delivery in their counties is average. And of course, there is almost a third who rate service delivery as poor. And interestingly, 17% think things are good enough, which is good. And how have services changed across the last 5 years, starting with health? And across health, we looked at different aspects: construction of new dispensaries and hospitals, availability of medical staff, and availability of medicines. So in terms of new hospitals and dispensaries, about 25%, almost a quarter, things have gone better. In terms of availability of medical staff, almost the same proportion. But of course, they are quite, you can look at, say, availability of medicines, 47% mentioning that it has got worse in the last 5 years. Next, please. In terms of education, I think the most outstanding bit here is bursaries. People out there, 43% mentioning that it has got better across the time, last 5 years. And I don't think there's any other outstanding bit I want to mention that. Perhaps we can all argue as to why people are thinking that bursaries are getting better. Is it a good situation that more and more people are interested in bursaries? I don't know. Effects of effective service delivery. Challenges to effective service delivery at the county level. And this is as viewed by the executive. The first thing was funding constraints in terms of limited budgets, that counties are mentioning that they are not getting enough funding. And even when that funding comes, it comes from the national government, it is normally delayed. Then there are also issues of leakages, inefficiencies in this revenue collection, which is a concern for a lot of us in this room. And of course, 2 counties mentioned the issues of, 2 respondents mentioned issues of insecurity and banditry. Then interesting unanticipated demand for services from neighboring counties. This was mentioned, I think, by counties like Machakos, Nairobi, and Kiambu, that there is so much demand for services like health from other counties. People coming from other counties to seek services from their counties, and these are not budgeted for. Those, of course, that becomes a challenge because of budget constraints. Next, please. On integrity, the first question that we handled was the issue of whether counties have key governance documents, and 2, the perceived level of corruption from the select counties. I want to speak to, before we get to that, I want to speak to the issue of key policy documents. I think what we found out is that most counties have all the key governance, almost all the key governance documents, whether you're talking of the procurement regulations, they have asset trackers, they have almost everything. So the question, therefore, that we found ourselves facing is, why is corruption still an issue if counties have all the critical documents? And of course, the answer is in terms of enforcement. This, I think, we have already handled. So, yeah, these are the same slides that we had in the previous. This is what I was mentioning, that when you speak to the counties, they have all the critical integrity mechanisms. They have audit committees, they have corruption mechanisms, reporting mechanisms, they have list of pre-qualified vendors, they have code of conduct for staff that is customized to the county. They have all this. Then, but because the level of service delivery and all the challenges that we mentioned are related to these documents, then it tells a story that perhaps even after having all these documents, after having all these policies, the implementation or the enforcement of those documents and policies still remains a critical challenge. So what is TI recommending? First, that Parliament should explore modalities to strengthen awareness on the role and visibility of the office of the senator, and two, the woman representative. There is no way citizens would be able to hold these two offices to account until and unless citizens know what to expect from those two offices. So that becomes a critical ask to the Parliament. Two, that elected leaders should diversify the media channels that they use to communicate to the citizenry, so that you reach the widest pool of citizens that you represent. And three, that county governments should establish a fund for civic education as per the requirement of Article 100 of the County Government Act. On transparency and access to information, county governments should take deliberate steps to ensure that citizens can access and understand important documents. We've already flagged that out. Counties should increase their transparency and openness to project implementation. In terms of CSOs, those of us around this room, that we should engage the various county governments to introduce and strengthen access to information mechanisms. Counties should also do their part in terms of increasing allocations for information and dissemination of information related to public participation. On service delivery, the national government needs to enhance the reliability of fiscal transfers to county government, so that county governments can get their allocations on time, so that they can spend on time and therefore deliver reliable services. But alongside that, counties should also strengthen their local resource mobilization capacities, so that if there are to be hitches on fiscal transfers of the national government, then those hitches do not fundamentally or in a big way affect service delivery. Then there is the issue of unfinished projects that were started by previous governments. We found that it was a real concern that so much resources was being held by incomplete projects that were started by previous governments that the current governments at the county level don't want to adopt or to finish. And that, of course, is an inefficiency and not the most prudent use of public money. On integrity, one of the key things that we kept finding out in the survey was that counties are, of course, trying to do a bit in terms of integrity, but the function of integrity is spread across so many offices, from HR to procurement to administration to the office of the governor, so much so that there is no one central point where the whole issue of integrity is being handled. So we are proposing the establishment of a standalone office of integrity officer at the county level. Two, that county governments should take deliberate steps to enhance effectiveness of their in-house integrity and anti-corruption measures, so that there are we move from a situation where we have so very nice documents on paper, but the enforcement is perhaps wanting. And I think that is the end. I stop there and take your questions, comments, and notes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Daktari. Another round of applause for Dr. Mwangi. Thank you very much. I'm hoping some of those findings have resonated with you personally, but also with you from the institutions that you work in or the areas of work that you engaged in. Have they? Yeah? So we'll have some time to interact around those findings. But just to recognize some of our partners who've come in, I've seen Uraia come in. Are they there? Uraia? Yes, thank you very much, Nancy. Then there is Ministry of Education. Yeah, Ministry of Health. Karibu sana. EACC here with us. Karibu. Commission on Administrative Justice. Thank you very much. Karibu sana. And the Council of Governors. Yeah, so there are quite a number of us who've come in and resonate with a lot of the findings that we have. So we'll get into some short plenary just to get feedback, and my colleague Caroline Miner will be leading us on that. We are a bit offshoot with time, so you'll allow us to see how we can speed up the program. But yeah, karibu sana, Caro.
Thank you very much, Titus. Good morning once again. Asante sana Mwangi for comprehensively taking us through the Kenya Bribery Index 2025 and the County Governance Status Reports as well, which are part of the signature products by Transparency International Kenya. So we are at that moment where we would really appreciate your feedback, your comments, your sentiments based on the presentation that has been made. This is on the key findings as well as the recommendations that have been presented by Mwangi. And just before we get to that section, I would just love to mention that these reports were validated together with representatives from the county secretaries across the 15 counties that we had sampled, representatives from the speakers' offices, and this included the committee chairs under the different public services that have been mentioned in these two different reports, as well as the citizen. In addition to that, this morning we've had a pre-briefing meeting with state actors as well as oversight institutions, representations, to just take them through the key findings and the recommendations emanating from the Bribery Index, the Kenya Bribery Index 2025. So we'll move to getting general feedback, and we are going to start with feedback on the Kenya Bribery Index 2025 before we get feedback on the County Governance Status Report. So Titus has the other microphone. We have the first hand, then the second hand here, the third hand. We want to take the first 5, 4, and 5.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I wanted to speak to the judiciary.
Sorry, as you're giving your feedback, kindly remember to mention your name and the institution you're representing.
Yeah, my name is Philip Gichana from GFI. So my question, I wanted to speak about the judiciary, and in terms of the rankings, the indicators, that some, in terms of the indicators you've shown, that, for example, the likelihood of being asked a bribe in the judiciary is low. But then when it comes to the average, it tops in terms of the bribe that is being paid. So my thinking, would it be fair to assume that maybe in the judiciary, bribery is an elite affair, and therefore it would not, for example, impact matters access to justice for the rest of the public? And then also just looking at that is the other element of the reforms, the recommendations that we are making in terms of the judiciary, and that is on the complaints. I think this time round we are seeing something very unique. We have the CJ, the current CJ, who's suing the Judicial Service Commission, where she sits, as the chair of that body. And these are matters on complaints. So is it fair to also say that the mechanism of complaints, for example, in the judiciary has completely failed, and it's time that we recommend, for example, maybe an independent ombudsman to deal with those complaints therein? And my last point is also on the police reforms. Maybe, and this is a question to the TI and the police reform working group in the room, is there a point where we can say now the reforms are enough? This body as constituted is irredeemably broken. We need to do away with it and maybe make other recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philip. We've taken note of your feedback.
My name is Davis Malombe, Executive Director, Kenya Human Rights Commission. Thank you, TI, for the great reports. Allow me to comment on the two, because I need to just attend to another meeting. I think first, the reports are critical because the first one, as we prepare the State of Nation report as civil society, which we normally prepare together with TI and other civil society groups, which is under Article 132 of the Constitution. I think this will go a long way in terms of even informing that process, where we do a report by the time the regime in office was sworn in. So the report is about to be submitted from October, because the regime came to office in September. So this year we are going to be doing a report card of 3 years. So this is going to be one of the one of the documents for consideration. And I think at the same time, under the County Government Act, governors are also supposed to prepare state of counties reports every year, just like the president. And I think this report should also go into that kind of conversations. I just want to make two observations. And one of it is from where we sit from a human rights point of view. I think we'll find ways of also interacting with the TI to just bring the human rights conversations into this, because when we are talking about even the indicators about access to information and access to services, that's basically borders on violation of Article 43, which is basically on economic rights. And even some of the behaviors of some of the effects, for example, bribery, also violates the right to bear administrative action, because the one who bribes then gets a upper hand. So I think we'll find ways of, Sheila, just bringing the human rights conversation into this, because we are also planning to commission our own studies on the state of human rights within counties. But this is one of the beginning points in terms of processing some of the implications on corruption and bribery on human rights. Just bring those leakages, but to us it's just going to be building on the existing reports like this. Finally, and also this also touches on the institutions which have been mentioned in the two reports. Most of those obligations are also bordering on human rights provisions, and also, yeah. So I think, to me, in the two reports, one of the biggest problem which then affects service delivery and also bribery is this lack of culture of public service, where there's a lot of lethargy when it comes to provision of services. So in most cases, when you go to government offices, whether it's national or county levels, you find these processes where no one is committed to fair provision of services. So that's why people feel so frustrated, to the extent that now they are forced to, fast track the process. So, for example, if you go to the Ministry of Land, in most of the counties, and there was a report which was done last year, I think by the Commission on Administrative Justice, saying most of the people in the country are struggling to get titles. So, if you go to those offices, everywhere, because I also go home a lot, where I also go for services in Kitui.
you'll find it is impossible. It's so frustrating for the people. So unless we also create that culture of public service, which is also part of the obligation in the Constitution under Article 73, people are supposed to be disciplined and committed to provide to provision of services, and the Katiba is very clear on that. So I don't know what we are going to do with that, because it's also a change of culture, but it's also an obligation for state and public officers to ensure that, you know, people are able to access the services for which they pay for. So that's why part of the reason you find this bribery. And then finally, my recommendation is possibly to also in future find ways of also connecting the two studies. And one of the ways is also looking at when you are looking at counties services, can we also input the bribery component there? Because already we have the people we are speaking to, and we have offices we are also speaking to. So also asking people whether in counties there are also propensities of being asked for bribes, and of course the element of corruption then cutting across the two levels of researches. I have a question about, because I've seen there's a comparative from 2019, 2017. So does it mean then the last studies were done that time? And then, so what do we need to do then to ensure that there's also periodic annual annual analysis? Because I think the annual studies are critical, because most of these institutions we are audit to account have also obligations to be preparing annual reports to the nation. So I think looking at ways of ensuring that we have annual studies around these areas would be critical, but also ensuring we have also representation from Northern Kenya, because I saw the first study, all the counties which were sampled, 15 counties, we did have one from the so-called Northern Kenya. Asanteni sana. But thank you for the good work.
Thank you very much, Davis, for the feedback.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Bernard Mogesa. I'm the CEO of Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. And kudos to Daktari for this research, quite informative. The statistics that you have presented, and also the TI team led by Sheila. Thank you very much for availing this. I don't want to go back to what my colleague Malombe from the Kenya Human Rights Commission has mentioned. I had a couple of those points, but thank you for highlighting them, especially then how does this bribery information that we have here impacts on human rights in the Republic. So I don't want to venture so much into that, but one recommendation probably for the future, and I liked the way you have enumerated the sectors that participated in this study. But when we listen to the Kenyans on the ground, could we then next maybe study, think about the energy sector? The energy sector has a number of challenges, a number of issues, to the Kenyans. And we may need, to have that empirical evidence on how this energy sector then is resonating well in not only service delivery, but also bribery and other things. Just a recommendation. Then going to the recommendations, quite practical. I would like to add, whereas I agree that yes, Parliament needs to develop a legislation on conflict of interest. Actually, this process had started, but I think it has stalled at some point. So maybe, Sheila, what we may need to do as players in this sector, the governance sector, is how do we engage then the relevant committee to ensure that that process does not stall, number one. Then number two, how do we deal with the interests? Because when I listened to the conversation, there was a lot of interests emanating from, key players, including members of, Parliament or the executive, among others. Then we could also expound another recommendation where then we are asking the committee, the budget committee of the National Assembly, to look at how they can allocate resources for the automation services that you have talked about. Because when you go to some of these institutions, when there are human rights violations, you are told, oh yeah, we would have done this, but you know there are no resources. So we could also look at, you can add that one, and then we look at a way, how do we, engage that particular committee of the National Assembly, because they are the ones who allocate the resources. And then we prioritize as a nation in terms of automation of the services for purposes of enhancing expeditious, dispensation of services and justice across. My final then point on the second report, in just one statement, what you've presented, is it a sign, could it be the root cause of the kind of impeachments that we see that are normally presented across impeachment of governors? And then how do we intend to engage at that particular level so that then they are also able to absorb what you've presented here, which is quite evidential and can be supportive in terms of service delivery in those areas. Thank you very much. I hope I'll get time to engage with the full report and also partner with you in engaging now some of those institutions mentioned in this report in terms of implementing these particular recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ari, for the feedback. We have two more on this side.
My name is Gladys Minor from Uriah Trust. I'm the head of finance and support services. Mine was food for thought. I want to thank Dr. Ari for the presentation, as well as Sheila and TI team for this report. Listening to the presentation, what came into my mind is that as leaders, and especially in institutions, what practical steps can leaders take to model the integrity and create an ethical culture in the organization? Secondly, as just as a practical step, is investing on ethical trainings and system and awareness. Once this is embedded in the systems, could that contribute to reduce corruption in our service delivery and even in our institutions?
Thank you very much for the feedback.
Yeah, thank you too. I'm Renis Bunde from Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Thank you to TI and Dr. Ari for the good report. So my concern by default will be on the methodology. It wasn't very clear. Yes, you selected, was it 1,033 households, right? Of which you are targeting like an individual per household aged 18 years and above. What informed the size? Because looking at that vis-a-vis the total population aged 18 years and above, that was a small proportion or representation. And just to add on what my other colleague had indicated, why 15 counties? And we know that the way the counties are of late, and like where we had the provinces or the regions, we normally advocate for a situation where you go to all the 47 counties, retaining the same sample size, yes, but now consider the prevalence per county. And we also have the aspect of rural-urban per county. So we normally have what we call 92 domains. We know Nairobi and Mombasa are purely urban. But for the rest, we normally consider that bit of both rural and urban. Did you take that into consideration? And if at all you took all these into consideration, did you do weighting at the end? And because we normally have what we call non-response rate. As you sample, it means they are representing the general population. So when you are doing analysis, you should also now weight back to the general population to make the findings or the inferences make sense. I'm not very sure that you did that because from the findings, it looks a bit biased. That is from my side. And going forward, just the way ESCC have been doing of late, I urge you to work closely with KNBS so that once we validate the methodology, then the findings can easily be accepted. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rini, for the feedback. All right, so that was on the Bribery Index. We have one more, then the last one.
Thank you. Thank you. Wish to appreciate Transparency International for a job well done. This kind of reports are important even for our own use as departments. My name is Sophie Abuga. I'm from Kenya Revenue Authority. I'm looking at the likelihood, one of the indicators where I have noted that in the year 2019, tax services, there is dash, so I don't know, I think maybe it was not one of the areas covered. It's dash, but now in the financial year 2025, the likelihood is at 12.1%. And having been sent by my CEO to represent him, the first question he'll ask me, what happened? What has happened? How come? Even in terms of the amount of money being asked for in terms of bribe has gone up, he'll ask me. So I believe I'll get the answers from this detailed report. Yeah, but what I think in terms of the second report on the awareness of critical documents by citizenry, of the opinion that perhaps our people in the counties, the rural people, they don't understand these documents because I believe these documents are either in English or Kiswahili. We may consider maybe having these key documents translated into our mother tongues so that then the citizenry in the village can be able to make good judgment. The recommendation I note that you have made is that Parliament may take the role of, for example, educating the citizenry on the roles of the various offices like the women rep and the senators. I am thinking it is in the interest of parliamentarians to keep the citizenry not quite knowledgeable so that it is easier then. So maybe somebody else, we give this responsibility to somebody else to do the awareness creation, because I look at where I'm coming from. I don't foresee, for example, a woman rep coming home and telling the citizenry that my role is this and this. The more ignorant we are, the better for those who are in power.
Thanks, Sophie, for the feedback. We will now take the 5 final feedback. As you give, you can also give your feedback on the county governance status report so that you get the responses at once. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Thomas Omboti from CRS. Just a point of clarification. I'd like to know, when you talk of Huduma centers, do you talk of, as it's structured, there are different departments that are housed in Huduma centers. So in your studies, is it Huduma centers, the staff, or the departments that are housed there? Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thomas, sorry.
Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Sewe. I'm from the judiciary. And I think I want to thank Daktari for the good presentation. And just to say that when you are told you are dirty or your cloth is dirty, the first thing is to look at yourself. You don't defend yourself. So we take the report as it is. I'm one of the persons who questioned the methodology. Not that it is wrong, but that we can improve on it. Especially when we talk, for example, of judiciary, we know judiciary, the premise and judiciary, the people who work there. And we know, for example, if you're talking about criminal justice, you find police there, you find ODPP there, you find the judicial officers, the judges and magistrates, and all of them work in the judiciary premises. We find even advocates working there. So it will be of interest for us to know exactly, because the general public just think that we are going to court. So everything, whether it is prosecution, whether it is what, because you're going to court, it is judiciary. So in terms of refining the methodology to get exactly the information that can help us, for example, what is coming out, like it's elite in terms of bribery. How can we tackle it? Is it the advocates? Because we have even advocates taking bribe on behalf of judicial officers. Yeah, those are there. We have various middlemen around the court premises also taking. We have ODPP who people think are judicial officers also. So we need to be very clear there so that the report is very useful to us going forward. Secondly, I think I'm a bit happy with the report, because when you talk about livelihood, we are talking about 18 coming from 48 in 2017 and 18 in 2019. When we talk about prevalence, which is a major concern, again, we've reduced from 46 to 41. When it comes to the average that you're talking about, we moved from 24 to 18. It's going down. Probably because of the digitization efforts that have been going on in the judiciary. You know about the filing, the e-filing, the virtual courts. Now the interactions are reduced. Probably that is what is leading to this. But I agree with my colleague from KNBS and the other stakeholders. I think before the tool is administered, you can involve us so that we can also help you craft out how to do data collection. Thank you.
Thank you, Daktari. The last three.
So allow me also to thank Dr. Mwangi for the presentation. My name is Beatrice Chelagat. I serve at Huduma Secretariat. So let me first demystify. There's a difference between Huduma Kenya Secretariat and Huduma Centers. The centers are the satellite offices which offer services. So number two, I also, allow me to borrow what my colleague from CRS has mentioned. So Huduma is the service. We don't own any service. We are just a platform. So we'll be engaging more with the partners, with TI, to get to really understand where the corruption is coming from. And there might be need to look at the front office and the back office so that we understand where exactly is the problem. Now, all those institutions which have been mentioned from number 1 to 10, they all have services at Huduma. So, as I said, moving forward, because this is now a time to learn and reflect on what the citizens have said so that we can improve. So we need to find ways of working towards citizens understanding more on what is available. We always struggle as Huduma to bring knowledge to citizens to understand that there are some services which are free and there are those services which are instant. There are some services which you have to pay some fee and which is documented. So in terms of conveying information to citizens, we really partner a lot with not only state actors but also non-state actors. We have forums called Huduma Mashinani where we go to the grassroots and talk to citizens. So in that way, we look for more partnerships. So lastly, food for thought. There's a lot of investment in terms of automation and digitalization. As you can see, most of those agencies we mentioned actually leverage on technology. But why is it that we are still seeing the rates of bribery going up instead of coming down? We need to think of the civil servants or the public servants in terms of training and lessening the time of accessing those services, turnaround times. So based on the issue of training, then you'll be able to expect the services should be easily available and we don't take time. For me, those are the few thoughts I had. Thank you very much, and we look forward for more interventions.
Thank you for the feedback, and we have the final one. Okay, the final and the final.
Okay, thank you. I'm James Shearer. I work for Twiza East Africa. Dr. Kibadi, did a good job at TI for conducting survey. I wanted just to point out on the second presentation with regard to the interaction between citizen and county leaders. We decided to expand in another survey the scope such to include the chief and the village elders, and we found that the numbers dwarfed the ones for MCAs and all that. Given some of the services they go to get in these other offices, could there be a conflict between the two, the national government and the county government? Because if they prefer more to go to the national an office linked to the national government, it's a clear indicator there are one or two things. And in addition, maybe in future, would you mind to include the office in charge of public participation? Because it's so good to know why is there apathy, especially when it comes to seeking information and interacting with leaders. Thank you.
Thanks for the feedback.
Thank you. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the TI team for quite an informative report. My name is Jacinta from National Police Service Commission. With the commission, we mainly are in charge of developing policies. And my suggestion is maybe in the future, if TI could segregate the report so that it's clear to us which department or which unit the public is referring to. Because as you are aware, the police is big and it has like 15 units. So with the report maybe singling out, did they interact with the police station, or is it the dog unit, or is it police from the security of government building and installation, or was it police from the border patrol unit, so that we can tailor the policies to address that particular, it singles out or it narrows down where we need to focus more our effort in reforming the police. Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback. We've taken note of that. Jacob, an online participant, you have your hand up in less than 30 seconds. Kindly unmute and raise your feedback. We cannot hear you, Jacob.
We have 15,000 NGOs across the country, cutting across 47 counties. We are all set by ACT, Act, Change, Transform.
Please proceed, Jacob.
Hello?
We can hear you. All right, network issue there. Jacob, kindly write your feedback in the chat box. So thank you everyone for sharing your feedback, your sentiments, the questions that you've raised on the Kenya Bribery Index 2025 and the County Governance Status Report. So we are going to just get quick responses from Mwangi around the methodology and the findings as well as the recommendations. Then we'll also get feedback from Sheila on some of the issues that have been raised. Then as the other speakers come on board, they'll be able to share additional feedback on the same. So Mwangi, over to you.
I think there are one or two questions touching on methodology. First question from our colleague from KNBS, right? And the concern was first the size of the sample. Perhaps I needed to mention that these surveys happened concurrently. So the actual size of the number of respondents that we spoke to were therefore a combination of the 1,000 that we spoke to in the first survey and slightly above the 1,000 that spoke to in the second survey. So that's about 2,000. The limitation of this, the limitation that comes with perhaps carrying out two surveys at the same time, then is that perhaps you may not have the luxury of expanding the sample to some certain number. So that's the first thing. The second thing is about perhaps the distribution of the survey.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, the second bit was about spreading the sample across the 47 counties. That would be quite welcome. But I think unlike KNBS, most institutions around the table here are quite constrained about finances. I think it's the only concern about that. Such a survey across 47 counties would be quite expensive, and that informs the reason why sampling would be important, both at the number of people that you want to speak to and where you want to speak to them from. But I also take the very positive welcome that KNBS can work with TI in future studies, perhaps to make them a bit more structured in a way that because you are the owners, you are the custodians of research standards in Kenya, right? So I think it's a welcome. It's some challenge that Shira and the rest of the team can take, so that in the subsequent surveys that we can perhaps work closely with you. But I also want to mention, in terms of sampling, that the other reason why you'd find some CSOs pick sampling some of the areas and not others, perhaps it also informs, because we don't want to leave the work here. We want also to have findings that we can pursue. So most times where the footprint of our work, other work is also informs where we'll base our research studies. So that if we have so much work happening in Nairobi and Kiambu and Bungoma, then you'll find most of our surveys would be perhaps touching on those areas, not excluding the other areas intentionally, but perhaps because we want these surveys to inform all the rest of the work that we are doing. There was a question about the Huduma centers, who exactly we mean by Huduma centers. The question in the survey was in terms of which institutions that our respondents interacted with. So we didn't dig deeper into what actual service took you to Huduma Center. But the concern here, and this also relates to the police, is that the institution has been mentioned as an institution where people are seeking for services and are being expected or demanded to pay bribes. So maybe any deeper information can come if we target a particular study touching on that particular institution, so that we can go deeper and say, oh, it is the police. Okay, what within the police force? Is it recruitment? Is it getting abstract? Is it getting all that information can come from a deeper study, perhaps? maybe the way this kind of study is structured may not be able to have all those findings under one cover. I think those are the questions that I picked to touch on the methodology, and of course the issue of the quick addition that next time we can speak to the office touching working on public participation. I think that is very important. But speaking to the county headquarters and speaking to the members, the chief officers in charge of finance, then what we found out is that they are the key coordinators in terms of public participation. But it does no harm next time to go perhaps much deeper and speak to the actual officers. So thank you so much. I think the other questions are more related to TI work, and I think Carlo can guide us.
Thank you very much, Mwangi. Thank you, Mwangi, for your response on the methodology, key areas around the findings and recommendations. I'll now give it to our Executive Director, Sheila, to just respond on some of the feedback that has been raised.
Thank you very much. I think I'll do this together with my remarks so that we can be able to conclude. We can be able to conclude on time. Let me come here so that I can be seen. So I'll just put this together. I'll just first make some remarks, and then I'll go to the specific questions that have been able to capture from some of the participants. But first, let me just start by saying and thanking everyone for making the time this morning to join us for the launch of these two very key reports. Your presence here, both our comrades and our partners from civil society, our supporters, and people we have worked with, have given us tremendous technical and monetary support from the development partners, and also from the government actors who I think the many of these findings and the recommendations we are making, we are relying on them to carry them forward. But your presence here gives us the hope and the, of course, also expectation that we'll be able to move forward in terms of making key reforms in the fight against corruption, particularly considering some of the very adverse findings that we have seen and the concerns that we continue to hear from Kenyans about the levels of corruption. And even when you look at the projections, what are Kenyans saying in terms of what they expect to see or feel in regard to corruption in the next year? You know, the future looks, my colleague Malombe has gone, but he likes to use a particular word, bleak and dire. So I would today borrow his words when you look at the numbers and what people are saying about the levels of corruption that are projected in the next year. But quickly, just to my remarks, the Bribery Index has been one of the signature products of Transparency International Kenya for many, many years. That is how I first met Dr. Mwangi Kibathi. He used to work at TI. He used to do our research for us, and that is why we asked him to come and assist us to this baby that he used to have. When I came to TI, I found Mwangi holding the Bribery Index baby. I don't know, Mwangi, is it still a baby or now you're a grandfather? You've left it to the Gen Zs, Kina Caroline. But when I first joined TI as a very young girl, we worked with Mwangi on the Bribery Index for some years. And we are happy that we've been able to revive it because we've taken a kind of a hiatus for almost 5 years. Malombe asked a question that it seems like it's something that needs to be periodic, but we have taken almost 5 years before conducting it since 2019. Is it 5 years or 6 years? 6 years. And the reason is, as Mwangi said, Mbesha, money, we need money to be able to do this. A research fieldwork of this scope is quite huge and requires a lot of resources, and we are grateful, at least for this year. We got the support of Diakonia Kenya through the support of also the Embassy of Sweden, who helped us to put these two research products out. but it is quite an expensive affair. But previously, we used to have it annually. It started as the Urban Bribery Index in 2001. Actually, it was designed by Dr. David Ndii, those days when he was working with the research team at TI. And so they designed the Urban Bribery Index, which was simply just supposed to capture the experiences of ordinary Kenyans and their daily encounter with public services and corruption, asking questions, who are Kenyans bribing, who is asking for bribes, how much is being asked, and for what reasons. And a few years later, this progressed and the scope was enhanced to national level, and were able to include the rural areas as well. And so it became a countrywide survey known as the Kenya Bribery Index. And in 2009, it was then expanded further to include Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania as the East Africa Bribery Index. And then in 2010, included both Rwanda and Burundi. But now in 2019, we just came back to look at the national patterns in regard to bribery, largely because of the concerns around the budgetary concerns. We didn't have enough resources to continue to do the 5 countries as we had started in 2010. And we would do that annually. We started doing it every 2 years in 2014. But then, as you have seen, we've taken almost 5 years. But we hope that we'll not take another 5 years before we go back to the ground to then just study the patterns. Because you have seen how, in some cases, when you look at some of the indicators, they have actually spiked. If you look at the aggregate index, where the police, for instance, has gone from 83.4 in 2017 to 64 in 2019, where we thought there was some level of improvement, and then back to 84. So maybe we needed to amplify our advocacy on the growing bribery concerns in the police and the other public services, so that we can also make certain demands in terms of accountability, so that then these agencies are then more responsive and ensure that from their end, they're also doing what is internally required to ensure that they clean up particularly areas which are prone or have been recorded certain loopholes, which then make bribery or other elements of corruption thrive. We saw this in lands as well. Previously in 2017 it was 41.7, went down to 32, and then 45 this year. Vehicle licensing as well, 43.7 this year, from 21.3 in 2019. So that's almost double. Tax services, this is in regard to the aggregate index. Tax services from 12 in 2017 to 28.4. 12 in 2017, and I think 2019 as well, to 28.4 this year. And even Huduma, where we previously said we saw very little or recorded really little evidence or patterns of bribery, where it has moved from 10 in 2017 to 12 in 2019 to 26. So it tells you that in terms of bribery, there is a considerable decline in terms of performance of the institutions and the services that we have been able to study under the Bribery Index. But then you also match this with what you see in regard to the perceptions of corruption, where many Kenyans are saying it has actually risen, and they're projecting that in the next year it is likely to even rise further. Of course, there are various factors to this decline and seemingly worsening levels of bribery. But this probably, as we have said earlier, needs a deeper analysis and looking at the whole ecosystem in regard to governance and anti-corruption. But I just want to also point out that about 2 months ago, we launched a report looking at the effectiveness and efficiency of our legislation, policies, and institutions of anti-corruption. It's called The Rubber Meets the Road, and I would invite those who haven't read it to read it, because one of the observations made was that despite the plethora of laws which have various sanctions for corruption and economic crimes, including bribery, we still have challenges in regard to prevention and law enforcement due to challenges ranging from executive and political influence, lack of functional and even financial autonomy of some of the key institutions which are supposed to oversee law enforcement and issues around anti-corruption, and even despite the letter and the spirit of the Constitution, which puts and entrenches some of these institutions and gives them that required independence to be able to perform. But then we have seen that many of these institutions don't have that independence, they don't have those resources. In fact, increasingly we are seeing defunding, that is, inadequate financial allocation to many of our independent institutions, and so they are really unable to perform in the way that they should. And this includes those institutions which are responsible for corruption. So when you look at all these things happening, and then the decry by the public that corruption has actually gone up, you then must also ask yourself, we have institutions, we have laws, we have policies, so many of them. What is not working and what needs fixing? So there's a mix of issues that we need to look at in terms of why there seems to be growing levels of bribery and other elements of corruption, as has been reported in other reports. And then the other concern as well has also been the average size of bribe, because other than the judiciary, which seemed to record a lower average from 24,000 to 18,800, most of the other services have seen a higher average of bribe. Land, for instance, from 12,600 to 10,000, vehicle licensing from 10,000 to 7,500, business licensing, and also just note the services that these agencies give, critical services, particularly in regard to socio-economic development. And then match that with some of the findings, for instance, saying that the self-employed registered the highest frequency of bribe-paying individuals at 48%, up from 45% in the last survey. And then there was something else, that younger people are paying more bribes, or rather are affected more by bribery, because we saw that, for instance, in the age group, these are what, millennials, 35 to 44, I think 29%, 35 to 44, those are millennials. There was a record of about 32% who said that they had paid bribes. Then you have the 25 to 34, the younger millennials and the Gen Zs. That was a record of 29% who reported paying bribes. The 18 to 24 age group as well, where there's 29% who reported paying bribes, and then look at where bribes have been paid. The services such as health, education, but then there's also employment, and rather business licensing, land services, which are really critical for economic production. So triangulate this with those who are saying they're self-employed and having registered the highest frequency of bribe-paying individuals. But then you ask yourself, could this be an indicator of the sustained frustration that has been expressed by Kenyans? When you look at the last 2 years, the Gen Z protests and all this unrest that we have seen, this actually, for me, is a pointer to some of the problems that we need to address in this country if we need to move forward. I think now maybe just going to some of the questions that some of the participants have asked. Philip, you asked, which I was going to also address here in regard to police reforms, but Philip Gishana, you asked a pertinent question on my interpretation of this is, where do we stop talking about reforms? I think you also tired about the reform talk like me, and arrive at implementation, or what? I think you had a more radical suggestion. I won't repeat it. But I think that's a frustration, because, for instance, with the police reforms, we've been at it for so long. There was a 2009 National Police Task Force report. Then there was a Police Reform Task Force report more recently, the one that was chaired by Maraga, which gives very, very critical recommendations in terms of moving the police. I still have difficulties calling it police service, because what I see normally has not been a service but a force in terms of how they have approached citizens and just the approach to daily interactions with citizens. So when you look at what we need to do to move forward in regard to the National Police Service, in terms of we need to rebuild trust, we need to see more accountability, more professionalism, and really a commitment to serving the community. And then you look at these findings in regard to, you know, they take the largest share of national bribe, right? They take the largest share, almost 50%. And then also among all the other elements or indicators that we have studied, the likelihood of bribery, even the average size of bribe, other than the judiciary, I think the police was next, then we see that there's really a growing concern that we really need to fix the police service. And then looking also at the concerns currently around police brutality. And I find it difficult to separate these two issues, police brutality and then the police corruption. Because for me, what connects these two challenges at the top is impunity. There's a high level of impunity. The police or officers that have meted out excessive violence leading to deaths, injuries, maiming, and many other violations of human rights to citizens, how many people have we seen actually being punished or being held accountable for those injustices? How many? I know there are very many cases going on, not even many cases, a few cases going on, you know, trying to hold the police accountable for those who have actually now been, you know, charged with particularly the killing of innocent citizens. Then on this other side, you look at the growing cases of bribery. Again, there's a lot of impunity. How many police have we actually seen being punished for taking bribes? How many? Mono angapi? And then when you drive out of here, for those who will drive towards Western Kenya like me, how you meet so many roadblocks on the way, and they know them, and we've reported them. But those roadblocks, even if you drive tomorrow, drive the next day, drive next month, drive next year, you'll find the same roadblocks. We've reported them. We've reported those same officers. They will continue asking you for bribes. You had last year when the IG, former IG Kome, I think it was in one of those panels with the head of public service on what they need to do to fight corruption, where he said that he knows that police are collecting bribes. At the end of the day, he knows that some officers go to their supervisors and they have to collect and report how much has been collected. But he seemed as helpless as all of us in terms of dealing with police bribery. Because then our wonder is, if you know, why don't you just deal with it? If you know these officers, why don't you deal with them? You know? And because these are crimes, but yet we continue to see those people serving and deployed out there and continue to commit the same crimes. So I think we must say enough is enough and actually have a very candid conversation on what needs to be done. I don't want to use the word reform, but we need radical changes in how some of these institutions are working. And of course, one of them is the police service. Malombe has left, but he had asked a question in terms of how can we also interrogate issues of bribery at the county level. I think that's something we can look at moving forward in our tools. I've answered the question about making the research periodic. And I think he had also mentioned that we as civil society usually do what we call the State of the Nation reports, where we actually assess different elements of the state, not just government, but let's call it as a collective, the state, and how we're doing in regard to service delivery, governance, and one of the things we look at in governance is the issue of corruption. And so these reports will feed into our State of the Nation report when we do get to that at probably the end of September, going into early October. Dr. Mogesa, thank you very much on your comments. I take the note on the issues around the conflict of interest bill. It's been quite frustrating, given that this journey started in 2018, and we're yet to have that bill in place. But we know that it was returned to Parliament, and the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, I think the last time we engaged, we're looking at how to start the process in terms of returning it, because it has to go back to Parliament, and because the President had rejected the version that was presented to him for signing. Gladys from Uraia, thank you very much for your comments. I think your thoughts speak very well to the need to tighten our prevention efforts. You've talked about the need for ethical training and some of the other ideas you've put forward. I don't know that ESCC is here. I know Joyce was here from Cliff. Maybe she'll speak a little bit more about the need for prevention, because our own thought is we should probably spend 90% of our time, for those who are working in anti-corruption, on prevention efforts. When we spend so much time on law enforcement, I want to call us what the Honorable former Attorney General Githu Muigai said, you're now a mortician. You're dealing with something that has already happened. And sometimes I think from my experience, looking at the success that we have had in the courts or in regard to investigation and prosecution, it is not a guarantee that every case will be won. In fact, we see more acquittals, and I think the other growing concern has been the withdrawal of cases. So rather than push so much on enforcement, what can we do to ensure that this money is not even stolen in the first place? So we do agree we need to spend more time on prevention, but maybe our representative from ESCC or the Kenya Leadership and Integrity Forum will be able to comment a little bit about that, on what is happening in regard to prevention. On the working with KNBS, we're actually working with KNBS currently. That was, I think, Renee who asked that question. I think you're aware that we are doing a research supported by UNODC together with ESCC, the National Gender and Equality Commission, and it's nationwide, and we look forward to also bringing back the participants here to be able to share the findings of that research on corruption. I think I've answered most of the questions. Many of them were comments which we take in regard to enhancing our anti-corruption efforts. I think one last one that I want to touch on before I hand over the mic, and I'll just combine these comments and questions from Jacinta of the National Police Service and Dr. Osewe from the Judiciary on the need for further analysis on the actors involved. I think in your case, for the judiciary, you said there are various actors. I think for the police, you also want to understand which particular police departments are this. Is this and what is it? The one that we never interact with, the one that dogs interact with is called? The dog unit, yes. Is it the dog unit? I don't think so. Is it the traffic police, the AP, or so on? Yes, I think that's important. That's really important. Because, well, it would be interesting to see whether dogs have the same bribery concerns that we do. But anyway, that's on a light note. But on the need for further information, yes, we actually do this. So in 2018, after we had done the Bribery Index, one of the studies we did was what we called drivers of corruption in the police service, to understand, okay, so there's a police service and then there are all these units within the police service. So where are the problems? It would be, of course, important, because things have since changed, to go back and do a further analysis in the same breath. With the judiciary, we also did a governance and corruption assessment, a very large governance and corruption assessment, which was launched in 2021. So it wasn't really a public study, but more something that the judiciary had commissioned us to do, supported by the World Bank. And so we look forward to doing something else, just to be able to take a deeper dive and look really at, do a further diagnostic of some of the issues in these sectors. But then, as I said before, yeah, depending on the resources available, but we are always happy to partner with the institutions and come in and look and do further in-depth analysis, so that we can be able to inform more focused anti-corruption efforts by the institutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sheila. Let's put our hands together for Sheila one more time. Great, and in the same spirit, let's also put our hands together for the consultant for the good dissemination work he has done. Good. So we are getting to the tail end of this particular event in this morning, so that we can be able to get into now at the launch. But before then, Kaida is standing there, right there. In case you have not ordered, or in case you have not had anything to bite, they will be closing in the next few minutes. So please, you can just make it known to her, so that maybe you can get something brought to your table. I hope that's possible. All right. So one more time, thank you, Sheila, for the responses, and also Dr. Mwangi for that. I also noticed, Dr. Mwangi, that there was a question that was asked about the findings on Huduma Center and whether you're talking specifically about staff or what exactly that meant as far as the statistics were concerned here. And my understanding, you will clarify if that's not the case, but my understanding is that what it meant is that if you were to go to Huduma Center to get the services, you'll actually be less prone to bribery within the Huduma Center, as opposed to you going for it in the offices, maybe the other offices within the other areas where you can get the same. I think that's basically what it meant, according to the statistics that we had. However, we have reports that we'll be sharing in a few, both soft copies and also a few of hard copies. You'll be able to get more information in terms of the details therein, including the breakdown for those who are asking. So please look out for that, or wait, we are getting to that particular level in a few. So to this point, we want to now invite a few of the speakers to be able to give some key remarks. And we want to start with Cliff. Cliff is the Kenya Leadership and Integrity Forum, which is basically hosted within the EACC. And basically they do a very good job of even coordinating efforts around anti-corruption, including even coordinating different sectors in the implementation of the Kenya Integrity Plan. So this particular point, I want to invite Joyce Munene, who is an assistant director at EACC, but also, and of importance, the head of secretariat. Joyce, you can come forward. Let's put our hands together as Joyce comes forward.
Thank you so much, Gibson. I'll request we be upstanding at least for 3 minutes. For 1 minute we stretch. We've been sitting for a while. Kindly, just stretch. Yes, we may sit down. Thank you so much. To the Transparency International team led by Madam Sheila Masinde, senior government officials in this room, private sector, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. So I'm Joyce Munene, as Gibson has introduced me, and I work with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. And I wish to recognize my colleague, Idris. Maybe you stand and people see EACC is well represented. Yeah, thank you so much, Idris. I'll speak on 3 issues. The partnership aspect. I highlight a few points on the 2 reports, and well done to the TI team and the consultant. And we highly appreciate inviting EACC. Kenya Leadership Integrity Forum brings together stakeholders from the public and private sector to collaborate in the fight against corruption. So we work closely with the Transparency International Kenya, with the vice chairperson of that forum being Madam Sheila Masinde. So TI Kenya does not work in isolation. It works very closely with EACC. We have, I believe each institution here is part of that forum, because we have ministries, departments, agencies, private sector, development partners, labor sector, executive, judiciary. Everybody's in this vehicle. This called the Kenya Leadership Integrity Forum, where it offers a platform. We engage on matters of anti-corruption, and we promote ethics and integrity. It's a forum where it's guided by a strategic plan, the Kenya Integrity Plan. So each institution has a role to play to promote ethics and integrity. And if we do our little or much of it, it will go a long way in mitigating some of the things we've seen in the reports. So Cliff is vibrant. I'll invite you to check on the EACC website under Cliff to learn more about the partnerships, how EACC works with other agencies to promote ethics and integrity. Speaking on the reports, the 2 reports, they are well detailed, and that's commendable. For sure, perception shapes reality, and it supports decision making and learning, and also creates biases. But I believe we are gathered here to reflect and see how best we can enforce the many laws we have, the policies, how institutions can improve and do better. So I would say it's a bit concerning on bribery, and I believe each one of us has been a victim, and if not us individually, then somebody close to us. I've been a victim of saying no to bribery, and it was not the best of the experiences for me, standing by what we are preaching, that I'm not bribing you, police officer, I'm not. And I was put in cell from morning, like around 6:15, because I was attending a burial. I was going to my county in Kirinyaga very early in the morning. So I've been tasked, make sure you carry the videographer and the photographer and keep time at the mortuary. So I wake up very early. I'm on Thika Road to pick the team. Then we proceed to the mortuary. And around, because before this position, I was an investigator. So I was just checking the time and marking what's happening to me. 6:08 a.m. I'm outside TRM. TRM to pick the team. And the police officer stopped me. One said, open the car. I opened. One told me, no, so that, we deal this thing haraka haraka. Just give my mkubwa something. And then you proceed. And they said, give something. What is something? Just be open. What is something? Madam, kwani uishi Kenya? I said, yeah, I live in Kenya. Just speak up. So the police officer tells me, let's drive to Kasarani police station. I said, instead of me driving to police station, could I drop these people so that I don't delay the burial that the service they're supposed to offer? And then I'll come to the police station. To cut the long story short, this scenario, this experience from 6 something, it ended around 3 in the afternoon. I didn't attend the burial, but I requested the team to find ways to go to the mortuary and offer services while I was dealing with this other issue. And at some point, I had to be bailed out. So we've been affected by bribery in one way or another, or the effects of bribery they're dire. They impact on the sustainability, the sustainable development goals as to governance, justice, and equality. So the effects are real. That was on bribery, and I took note of business licensing. The rise of 141.5% up. That is worrying. That for Kenyans to get services in that area, they must part with over 7,000. Those are the dire effects of bribery. I highlight on the county governance status report, and I'm glad that the county government was involved, was represented during the validation, because we work closely also with the county governments, and I wish to highlight some of the strategies EACC is employing to try and mitigate the bribery aspect and to improve on public service delivery. So we have a prevention mandate, and we undertake examinations into systems and procedures and the corruption risk assessments. So the EACC on its own volition, or even the institution, can conduct corruption risk assessments, where we look into the processes, the procedures, and flag out any risks, any corruption risks, and We worked closely with the teams, if it's the finance team, the HR, the procurement. And once we flag out those issues, there are recommendations. And ESCC makes follow-up into those recommendations so that we mitigate on those risks. ESCC also does capacity building on these issues of promoting ethics and integrity. We work closely with various partners and institutions because when you empower people with information, then they make the right decision. We also do sensitizations through public education and awareness from schools and even to the institutions. Automation, maybe I speak on automation. We've been advocating for automation, and I'm glad we are getting somewhere as a country in regard to automation of systems, and even the one that began in July, the EGP, to deal with public procurement. ESCC was part of the pilot and to implement the EGP. But remember, even with automation, if those managing and manning the systems are bribed or compromised, what automation ought to achieve may not be achieved fully. We know Saudi Arabia, as Kenyans, not so good because of the labor sector, but Saudi Arabia has one of the best automated systems. You find, as a supplier or contractor, you never need to go to any office. You never need to interact with anybody. Once you submit your tender documents, you'll just log into a system and see if your payment has gone through, because it's automated throughout. If you complete your works or you supply whatever the goods or services, you just need to log into the system, upload your documents, and whoever in whichever institution in the country is able to see what you've done. It's a system that works and has worked for Saudi Arabia, and it has reduced corruption. So if in our country we are able to implement some of these good ideas, implement fully, we'll see the intended results, and the impact in the long run will be felt across the country. Daktari mentioned about corruption prevention committees in the report. I'm glad that is one area that is across the counties and also institutions where we have corruption prevention committees. Capacity building is facilitated by ESCC. We have integrity assurance officers. All these to promote ethics and integrity at the institution levels, promote accountability. We have people inside those institutions championing on integrity, championing on preventing corruption. So on the issue of bribery, ESCC, apart from the law enforcement aspect, we also suggest administrative actions, especially where we know how sometimes courts can take time, but in partnership with the National Police Service, administrative actions are being implemented to deal with those to deal with police officers on administratively. It takes less time and it's effective. So we also do administrative actions, and they are suspended even from work until conclusion of the internal mechanisms. I liked the recommendations in the report. For instance, adherence to higher standards of public service delivery. Sheila Masinde has spoken well on, we have laws, we have policies, we have institutions. So what's left of us is just implementation and enforcement. If we reduce on impunity and greed, we'll able to see the impact that we so desire. And the passion in Sheila's governance is real. The passion is there. And I can assure you we are seated here because we want to contribute, however small, however minimal it is in this fight. And I'm always guided by the hummingbird. The hummingbird story is so real in the anti-corruption space. It is the little things that you will do. This bird to put that fire off. So for us even to put off this fire of corruption, of bribery. So let us individually and collectively do our part for the better of our country. I can talk and talk and talk, but I beg, because of time, to leave it there and thank the TI for giving Cliff and the ESCC this opportunity to be part of this discourse. And I believe they'll share the report so that the report is examined and in detail decisions can be made, or even to improve on our strategies to deal with bribery and corruption. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's put our hands together for Joyce, even as she takes her seat. Thank you so much, Joyce, for the good remarks on behalf of ESCC as well as Cliff. And yes, indeed, if we are to reduce greed and impunity, we'll actually make huge gains as refers to that. And so, yes, I agree. Sometimes it's quite discouraging to see that despite the effort we are putting into this fight against corruption, and there's so many things we are doing, still the statistics and the numbers are going up and up. But yes, the story of the hummingbird is real and will be encouraged by the same. Clearly, from your sharing, paying a bribe, of course, has consequences. Not paying a bribe has consequences. Paying a bribe consequences are worse than those of not paying a bribe. So I choose not to pay a bribe so that I can deal with the consequences of not paying a bribe. And I think we need to, all of us, choose that particular path so that, yes, it is a struggle for a day or two, but then you live to actually have more gains as opposed to paying a bribe. So I want to call into the next speaker, and we have a representative from the Devolution Working Group, who is also the Chief Executive Officer of ACT, to just be able to, yes, you have heard about the current status of the county governance status at the moment, and you as being a coordinator in, coordinating our work around that, what will be your reflection from the findings? So, Mr. Tom Were, please, karibu sana, so that you can share with us your reflections on this. Let's put our hands together for Mr. Tom Were as he comes forward.
Thank you, Gibson. Good morning. Allow me to ride on the protocols that have already been observed and just make very few remarks. A lot has been said. Thank you, TI, for this report. It is very useful. It builds on many other attempts across civil society to pick out different aspects of what appears to be affecting the social economic growth that we all desire. In other spaces, we say devolution must work. We don't have a choice. And because it must work, these two reports are very useful because they pick out aspects of the issues we have to deal with every day in attempt to make devolution work. There are hurdles, they are hindering, they are taking us back to the drawing board all the time, but there's this very strong belief among us who work in accountable and inclusive governance that devolution must work. So let me just make some quick observations. Number one, there was an interesting number somewhere about the class of the respondents. A majority were semi-rural and rural communities. A good number, as Sheila said, were those in their middle to youthful age, starting from the end of Gen Z up to what would be called middle age. But one of the ones that struck me the most was those unemployed or self-employed. If you look at the statistics of those who are unemployed and or self-employed, they were the majority of the respondents. So if you think about corruption, if you think about bribery, if you think about service delivery, can you imagine that this person who is already unemployed is the same one who is faced with the biggest impact of bribery? And is the same person who is affected by the challenges of accessing services, which they really need. And that says a lot about our society. It basically says, unless we do something about bribery and corruption generally in a very impactful way, those who are unemployed or self-employed might not come out of that circle of unemployment, or might not be able to grow their businesses. And I want to pick out, I was here early, so I was able to watch a series of videos here which played on and on. And there's a young lady that was wearing an Arsenal Football Club shirt, who said something like, you know me, I'm in business, so I don't have a lot to do with managing corruption, because I come to my business and I interact with my customers. And while I interact with my customers, I do not know whether they are putting me in corruption by them buying things from me using corruptly acquired money, you know. And that got me concerned about how many millions like those live in our counties and across the whole country of Kenya that do not know that they are actually actively engaging in promoting and strengthening corruption in the cause of doing their own business. Completely unaware that this person who has come to buy 10 bags of cement has actually just taken this money away from someone else, because they don't ask you, who do you work for? Maybe it's the same police officer on the traffic, isn't it? Now in civilian. Maybe it's the same Tom, like my sister Munene there, who was driving to Nakuru and for some reason gave away 500 shillings, and someone remembered, oh, there's a fundi at home who needs some plumbing fittings. Now I can buy a 500 shillings, you know, or some of it is paying for service. So the big question we have to ask ourselves is, how do we realize this big animal question about accountable governance? What policies do we need to do this? But it also opened up my mind on a possible opportunity for those who are here whose roles are defined around services. For example, if you have traveled abroad, some of the countries in their visa application process have a fast track option. They have a fast track option. If you want it in 3 days, you'll get it, yes, but you pay 3 times the price. And I think immigration used to have that. If you want your passport renewed quickly, it gives you the option to pay a high amount so that it can be fast-tracked. And I'm thinking that is one of the possible solutions for those who are in a hurry. You pay the correct fees, you pay it equivalent to your hurry. If you're in too much of a hurry, pay a lot more. Feel the pain. If you can wait, pay the normal fee, be comfortable with the wait, and go home and wait. And I think a few years back during President Kibaki's term, we also had these instant fines. They used to be there on the road, they tell you what your fault is, you accept, you are told wewe lipa, uende ama tupatane kotini, kesho ama Monday ama tuende sahi. So you had to choose. But of course, you know, those can also be misused. So finally, in relation to the studies, I'm also concerned about the finding that most people feared retribution if they reported incidences. And that's a big problem. It's like a gully across the road and you must get the other side. Because if you fear reporting, it basically means we do not have systems that protect or safeguard whistleblowers. And that creates another concern for reporting corruption issues. And you have seen in recent days when Gen Zs have taken us to the digital space and some have alarmed us by whistleblowing, the next thing that happens is they disappear. And when they come back, they say, oh, I was just scared, so I was hiding. But how many instances do they come back? You all know, so I don't have to say. Rarely do they come back. And so the fight about fighting bribery, fighting corruption, fighting fraud, fighting wastage is a difficult fight, and we all must commit ourselves. So that is the reason why ACT, Change Transform, for the last 25 years have been working in this space of good governance. And TI have been our very good friends. At some point they were our baby. Another time they became a sibling. Now they've become an age mate, yeah, of ACT. Yeah, and we do a good job, and we collaborate a lot on these issues. And so part of the reason we established through a UK government-funded Kenya Devolution Program this entity called the Kenya Devolution Civil Society Working Group, which Jacob Ngumi attempted to talk about, was exactly to spread our wings all the way to the counties to be able to collect real-time data on a day-to-day basis, so that we can be able to help Daktari here. If you said, Tom, can you help me reach the masses in all the 47? I will offer UK DCWG. Because we have over 15,000 civil society organizations that are members, built from the bottom and organized in the regional economic blocks. So if you say, give me the ones for Lake Region, we'll give you the entire network for Lake Region. If you say, give me the ones for North Rift Economic Block, we will give you those ones. They can help you to reach as far as you can with some of your perception surveys, and that is a resource which is available. And we're inviting any other entity here that is looking to reach as far as possible with their data collection, as long as they don't have to be in person, because in person has a cost. But if they can be done through sharing a short survey within the network and getting instant response, then you can be able to benefit from that. And my final comment on this is a beginning for what ACT, together with those of us who work in the governance space, can do. So this report forms a useful baseline for us. I've already seen strands of things we can do, and I will pick it up with my colleagues on some of those deepening studies that can be done. But we are also open to collaboration. There was something about why do the MCAs prefer infrastructure project? I'm sure you all have an answer. You know, it's just because it is a benefit-linked development idea. It is only during construction that you will have a contractor, that you'll have people to employ, you have to source materials. you have to, skip some quality assurance things, because some of that money can then go wherever they want. But we can sort out all this if we enhance our civic education efforts. And so I'm just rallying all of us to support the access to information, advocacy, to also speak to people whenever we interact with them, and increase their interest and awareness on avoiding to fall in the trap of paying bribes, or to elect leaders that are interested in changing their own lifestyle at the expense of their own citizens. Thank you, and congratulations, TI and your team.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tom Were. Let's put our hands together one more time for Mr. Tom Were. Yeah, completely agree with the sentiment you have given. And so, yeah, unless we do something, those unemployed and those are self-employed, as per the statistics, will remain so. And so that really calls for radical and active and deliberate change and shift of how we are doing things. Very important. And of course, pointing out to the figures around those who are not reporting because of the fear of whatever happens. But also, concerning more is those that have given up. And they know that even if they reported 80%, nothing will happen. So you see the hopelessness that has come with that, which really points to a situation that really needs change. Thank you so much one more time. And yeah, we appreciate the effort and the work that the working group is doing in terms of really coordinating us. And we accept the call that we can actually be able to work with you, in fact, in even accessing more counties in the next assignment. So thank you so much. Titus, I'm hoping that you are prepared for the main point, the main part, and the team. So please ensure that we have that ready. So I want to call in our last speaker to be able to come and give remarks. This work is supported by the Embassy of Sweden through Diaconia, Kenya. And so it is our privilege that we have a representative here today. And I want to invite Alice to be able to come forward and give remarks on behalf of Diaconia. Let's put our hands together for Alice. Karibu sana, Alice.
Thank you so much. So as you heard, my name is Alice Njau. A few months ago, I was also working at TI Kenya, by the way. Now I'm at Diaconia, program manager. I'm representing the country director who could not be here. So I'll just share some of the thoughts that she gave me to come and share with you today. So Diaconia, for those of us who may not be aware, we are driven by our commitment to good governance, citizens empowerment, human rights, gender equality, both in Kenya and globally. And we are very proud of our partnership with TI Kenya, who we have worked with since 2015 in this anti-corruption work. We also commend TI for the regular research that they continue to do in this sector, because it informs a lot of our programming, a lot of our advocacy, both for non-governmental organizations, but also for government, so they can be able to see where is it that they need to put more effort. As we may be aware, good governance and effective service delivery are fundamentally undermined by corruption. So if we want good service delivery, if we want to enjoy the services that we have paid for as citizens, we must address the issue of corruption. So there are various forms of corruption, including bribery, influence peddling, among other forms of corruption, that also prevent people from obtaining fair treatment in the justice sector. So corruption itself is an obstacle towards accessing justice in the country. So Diaconia has worked a lot to promote issues of access to justice, including providing legal aid, including promoting alternative justice systems, and other programs that support access to justice and that end corruption, so that the citizens can be able to enjoy their rights. Now, devolution, accountability, access to justice, and anti-corruption are all interconnected. So we cannot talk about devolution and implementation of devolution without looking at corruption and how it is affecting implementation of devolution. And we therefore must work together to strengthen these critical pillars of democracy and create a society where all citizens have the opportunity to drive. So Diakonia remains deeply committed to continuing its work in this area, and we look forward to collaborating with all of you to build a just and equitable Kenya informed by our vision. That is for a just, peaceful, sustainable world where all people can live dignified lives. Lastly, we'd like to recognize the generous and sustained support of our partnership with the Swedish Embassy. They have been instrumental in this work. They are the ones that have supported this program since 2015. They have also supported this research that has produced this very good report. So we really want to appreciate this. And lastly, on the report, this is a reflection for all of us, so that this report does not end here. We need to go back and critically again look at that report so that we are able to reflect as civil society and as government, what is this report actually telling us in terms of our programming. We need to look at where can we see improvements based on this report, and what are the factors that are attributing this improvement, so that we're able to see where do we put more effort, what is producing more results. The other ones that we need to check is which areas have deteriorated and why. What are the factors that are contributing to this deterioration? Because then that will inform our initiatives. As civil society, we have over the years been fighting corruption, been promoting good governance, but then again we need to ask ourselves, what strategies are we using? We need to sit down and review our strategies based on this report, so that then it is useful, it informs our strategies. So we need to look at which sectors do we focus on based on this report, where citizens are more affected. The other one is, what reforms can we push? And as we're talking about what reforms we can push, I think we need to give more emphasis on implementation of already existing laws and policies, because what I've seen over the years is that you can be kept in a cycle of developing a law. Then you're told this law does not have regulations, you do regulations. Then you're told guidelines. You are constantly developing something. So I think we need to look at what is it that we can actually push for implementation that will bring greater results. And then we consistently push for that. So I think this is a time for reflection, and we thank TI so much for giving us this report that will help in terms of reflection. We also need to reflect on societal attitudes towards corruption. I think that's some of the things that we need to also ask ourselves. Is the society actually okay with corruption, that it is us who are saying that it is not okay? Do we need to do that so that we're able to know, other than asking them why they pay, do they think it is okay to pay? Because you might find that probably they have no problem paying. So one of the things that happens is that sometimes when you say you want something, I want my passport reviewed, you'll hear somebody telling you, don't worry, I know somebody who can be able to do for you, yet you have not even gone there to look for the passport. Now, gaps in the research. So we need to look at what more information do we need to generate, because certain things have come out here that we may need more information in this area so that we can be able to act, so that in the next researches we can be able to see how we can include more areas, or do further research on some of the areas that people have raised concerns, and can be able to help the civil society and also government be able to address corruption and also improve on governance. And with that, I want to thank everyone and wishing you a good day and better prospects in the sector. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alice. A better hand clap for Alice. Yes, indeed, and thank you so much for reminding us that yes, we can pick some of the things and now move into implementation and just be able to follow up on that. But of importance also reflecting on the attitude around corruption. do the people that give bribes also know that the solicitor and the giver are equally guilty, and they actually face the same consequences? Those are some of the questions that, you know, really should be talking about as far as the new act is also concerned. So, good conversations there. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for the reflections. I want to give it to Titus to be able now to lead us into the next session. Titus, take it away. Yes, and before, of course, we forget that we also have the online participants. I know at some point we had 35 joining through Zoom, and then also around 64 that were following the conversation on our YouTube platform. So we really want to recognize you and know that we are following closely, and also we're looking at what you're commenting on the section. We'll be bringing some of those up. Yeah, but thank you so much. And in case, of course, you have more questions or comments, please put them on the comment section. Titus.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Big applause to the people who have been giving us their reflections on this. Again, I'm asking, have you seen yourself in the reflections of the findings? We've heard from Joyce her personal experience on the roadblocks of bribery on our roads. So let's see how we launch this. We want you to be part of this. So I'll be requesting Alice to come back, Sheila, our guests to come, representation from the judiciary, Tom, Joyce, Madam Jacinta from the National Police Service Commission. Please help us to launch this in style. I'm from the Business Registration Services. My colleagues, karibuni tu hapa ndio tusaidiane kulaunch. Hii ndio keki tunagawanya leo ya hii function, so you can just pick a copy here. Yeah. All right. Yes, we are launching all the reports here. Kila mtu akatiwe keki. Just one. There we go. All right. My colleagues can distribute the cakes on the tables. Hiyo keki QR code. Hiyo keki tunaikula digitally. So is this okay or yeah, down to earth. Gibson, are you in? Maybe you can come to that side. Okay, now it's yeah. So we are good. Oh, okay. Yeah. So let us launch this in style. I hope everybody on the tables mwagaiwa keki. Just scan the QR code so that you see what is being launched. So take it over. Let's, is there a countdown? Yes. Okay, we are starting with? All right. All right. Yes. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's launched, eh? Kila mtu ameonja hiyo keki? Umeonja? Hatuko na cake matron leo, but I'm hoping mtaendelea kuionja mkienda nyumbani. Hii ni keki ya kukula polepole, page by page. Sawa? Thank you very much. We'll give it to Sheila to... All right. Yes, Gibson.
All right, let's take our seats as I move a vote of thanks to all the participants. Let's have our seats as I bring it to close. All right, so there you have them. We have our County Governance Status Report 2025, as well as the Kenya Bribery Index 2025. I know that we have a few hard copies, but on your table, you have QR codes. You can actually be able to scan both. Ensure that the way you're doing it is in a way that you don't do both at the same time, just, narrow down to the specific ones. And you'll be able to access the soft copies of these two reports that we have launched today. Great. Yes, so I want to take this opportunity to thank the Embassy of Sweden. I know we had representatives here. We had Hannah and the team. For being supportive in facilitating the process, both of resulting to these reports that we have issued today or we have launched today, but also being with us this morning. So our appreciation goes to them. Together with the other embassies that we had a German embassy that was represented here. We had a representative who had to leave because of other engagements. The same way with the Embassy of Finland as well. So we really take this opportunity to thank them. Our development partners, including Diakonia Kenya, who supported the process. We say thank you. Alice, of course, you have spoken on behalf of Diakonia Kenya. We really appreciate you for supporting and also for being with us this morning. So convey our appreciation to the team even as you go back. But we also want to thank other development partners that were present this morning. I know I had GFI, GIZ, Uraia, and the rest. So our appreciation to you for making time to be with us. State actors, ESCC, we had Joyce and Idris present here. Thank you so much. We had Judiciary, the National Police Service Commission, and all the rest that are here today. Thank you so much for making time and for being with us. And we really appreciate your valuable insight into the conversations this morning. And so, yes, we know it touches on you, and we hope that it also becomes an opportunity to reflect more and also complement part of what you are doing internally. We understand that, yes, there are measures you're putting in place, there are processes you're already undertaking, but also we hope that this makes it as part of the resources that you're going to use to be able to further strengthen the efforts that you're putting. The speakers for the great insights they have given, yes, ACT, and also on behalf of the, the Devolution Working Group, Cliff, Secretariat, the ASCC, Diakonia, all the speakers that have spoken today, of course, our leadership at TI Kenya. Thank you so much. And then the person who has also made us convene today here, who was at the very critical part of the process, Dr. Mwangi Kibadhi, who was the consultant for, breaking down the findings of the Bribery Index and the County Governance Status Report. Good job, Daktari. And you have, fueled the conversations this morning and elicited very good conversations and reflections that we hope will, continue forming part of the conversation and informing the strategies out there. Members of the Fourth Estate, we can see you. We know you are with us, and so thank you so much for making it. I can see familiar faces, and also thank you for capturing this real time. We hope to see this, by the way, these reports all over the places that matter, okay, and for them to actually be able to get out there to the masses and inform them. And then all our peers, Zalendo Trust, Uraia Kenya, Human Rights Commission, Inuka, all the other CSOs and PBOs who are present here. We hope that these particular two reports or these particular research products you will find useful, and they will form also part of your advocacy and your reference to. And then the staff, the Transparency International staff and leadership of TI Kenya, led by our Executive Director Sheila. Thank you so much for making all this happen and for the effort put into this. The artists. We have artists who are going to give us some pieces even as we close. So we recognize you, we see you, and we know that, we are about to give it to you to just be able to give us some pieces. So yes, so all participants, thank you so much. Whoever I've not mentioned also, thank you so much for the audience, active participation. Of course, we couldn't do all this alone, that is for sure. And one more time, thank you so much for coming and being part of this. These particular reports can be found online, as I have indicated. I'm hoping that you are able to access them. For those that you have hard copies, you can be able to also make reference to the same. But even as I close, is that let these reports not remain mere statistics as part of the reports or some reports that were launched. No, let them inform your daily conversation on matters, good governance, on matters bribery and corruption, and you can always use them to improve on the processes. God bless you all. God bless us all, and you have a good rest of the day. Titus, back to you. Thank you so much. My claps, tafadhali. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you guys for joining us. I think Palma the poet wants to close this while dropping the mic, in style. Story come.
Story come. Na story go. Leo ni siku mzuri. Nashukuru sana kwa kukua place kama hii. Mina represent the Gen Z. Sisi ndo tumeona hapa hivi ndo tunaafektiwa na bribery sana, si ndio? So nataka kufanya piece ya police brutality kwa sababu kuna venye wamesema police brutality, majenzi wanaenda kwa streets kwa sababu wana advocate for good governance, accountability na end of corruption in Kenya, sawa? Saa hizi si hadi nyinyi umeona venye the Kenyan flag. Nasikia siku hizi wanasema imekuwa wrapped sana kwa coffins more than we celebrate it. So skiza. Tuna flex na bado Rex hajaipata justice. Wametuangusha in numbers. Wametuacha na stress tu. Justice for Rex imekuwa ni mess tu. Makarau hujiita cops juu kazi ni kuua tu. Hawa police wanadhani tunafanya karaoke. Sijuzi umeona wameua karaoke. Police wamekuwa kama COVID-19 juu wanaua hata muuza mask. Nimeshika hii mic na mkono wa kushoto na nikiangalia huko nyuma nasikia watu ni kulia tu. Police brutality imekuwa crisis. Na sinijuzi tumeona kwa news huyo kijana amemangwa. Nimetoka place yenye hewa mi hupumua kila siku ni ya mtutu wa risasi. Juu kijana ukiwa na dredi unaangushwa. Kijana ukiwa na meno ya silver unaangushwa. Kijana ukiwa madawa unaangushwa. Kijana ukiwa maandamano unaangushwa. Kijana ukiwa Central Police Station unaangushwa. Ama ndio maana hawa police wanajiitaga the cops juu kazi yao ni kuua tu. Na mbona time ya kurikurutu makarau nyi huchekiwa asifu mko na meno zote, ama hizo meno ni za kuuma the common mwananchi? Ama siku hizi sielewi utumishi kwa wote imegeuka ikakuwa vita kwa wote. Juu kila wakati ni kupiga tu citizens na the same information hatuipati ikipashwa huko Citizen TV. Ni fani siku hizi mlinda sheria ndo anavunja sheria kwa kumdhulumu mfuata sheria. I think sheria zimeandikwa tu kwa booklets pekee juu kazi yenu ni kufire tu bullets anywhere. Rest in peace zimekuwa mob design, hata nikianza kumention sitawahi fika mwisho. Rest in peace kwa wale wote wamekufa in the line of duty wakitetea sheria. Rest in peace kwa wale wote wamekufa after kuanika waheshimiwa kwa mitandao. Na vijana wa ghetto hatujaipata uhuru. I think bado tuko under British colonialism. Ni sad mtoto wa maskini akipata kitu watasema ameiba na akikosa watasema anapanga mission ya kuiba. Ni so sad unahamia mjini ukiwa na dream ya kuchange home, baadaye unarudi nyumbani dream zako zikiwa kwa jeneza. Badala ya kutetea raia 24/7, nyinyi mnatumia AK47 to cut a life short. Ama mko kwa mashindano ya the more people you kill, the more badges you get. Sielewi mbona wanasema justice is around the corner, ama sijui ni ile kona mbaya. Na justice mimi najua huku wa served free and fair ni mob justice pekee. Na jeshi najua huku wa peaceful pekee ni jeshi la wokovu pekee. Because of the interest of time, touch hapo hivyo. Palma the poet na nataka kusema we were the winner of the Creatives for Integrity powered by TI Kenya. Tunashukuru TI Kenya kwa programs hizi za kuinvolve artist. Shukran siku zote.
True. So thank you very much. I think we call it a morning. Is it still morning or? Yeah, let's call it a morning. Thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day. You're free to continue interacting. So thank you very much, and thank you for everyone who supported this. The online team, tunashukuru sana. Thank you very much. Yeah.